Hi, everyone, and welcome. This is our 2024 Bookish Year in Review. So basically, I just was like, what if we took some time to reflect back on the year and do a little like fast recap of all of the discourse that happened, all of the drama, quote unquote, that happened, but also just talking about trends and things that have been prominent within the bookish community. So I, of course, hello, my name is Marines. You're on my channel watching this. So I, of course, went and I invited two friends who immediately were like, yes, sign me up. So I'll let them introduce themselves as well.
Go ahead, Gravy.
Oh, okay. God, flashbacks to like COVID online school. Um, Hi, I'm Graciela, aka Grapey Del Taco. I'm Grapey Del Taco anywhere on social media, but most frequently on TikTok for as long as we still have it. Yay!
Yeah.
Oh boy. Hey, I'm Jemila. Jemila be reading on everything as well. Here on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok for as long as we have it, and Blue Sky. So follow me there. I don't really post that much, but maybe I will.
I'm so sorry that when I click comments, it just covers up Jamila's face. I'm on
Okay.
like just
I
entirely.
don't- I'm just a voice. I'm just a voice here.
Hello, everyone. Yay. Great Bee. Much excitement for Great Bee in the comments as well.
Gosh.
So, yeah, we're going to just jump right in. This is very loosey goosey. I mean, I have a presentation, but I apologize in advance for any like typos and whatever, because I was just like and dumping screenshots as I was making this. So, yeah, we're going to start with going through bookish discourse and drama. And this isn't everything. I know, like we could probably be here for like 5 hours talking about all this stuff. But as we're going through, would love to see your thoughts and reactions in the comments. And if I'm forgetting anything, or like there are things that we don't talk about that were some of your favorites of the year, you can let us know that as well. But we are going to get started with the book events that went bad in 2024. I don't know if these were all of them, but there were two prominent ones that came across my radar. So the first was Readers Take Denver. I saw someone call this the Fire Festival of Books, which I thought was really funny. It was not the first year that this event happened, but it apparently got it like they sold many more tickets this year than they had previously, and they just simply did not like account for the number of tickets that they sold. So a lot of the reports that came out of the event were a lack of security, reported theft, shortages of gift bags and lanyards and swag bags, dehydration. There was like a lack of water available. Some people got altitude sickness, and like that is tied in with like the lack of water as well. Harassment, which this was a claim that somebody made that like some of the volunteers were yelling at them and like putting hands on them as well. And after all of this came out, authors started pulling out from the 2025 event, so the event got canceled. Um, then also the book talk baddies. Gracie, you did a video on this one.
I did do a video on this because I was like, it was one of those things where it was like, oh, the Book Talk Baddies retreat, but it was the Book Talk Baddies Facebook group retreat. So there was a Facebook group called the Book Talk Baddies. That was a place for people to like get book recs and to talk to each other and to like do wish list giveaway things. And apparently there were already reports of like scammy behavior, but there was a retreat somewhere. I can't remember where. I'm sure I have a video. It's all I know. I made a really in-depth video about it months ago. And it just like went crazy. But I think what's really interesting about it is that depending on who you ask who attended the retreat, because they rented out this gigantic like multi-story cabin with like a few dozen people, depending on who you ask, it was either, oh my God, so much fun, or like, this is literally a scam, I hate everything, which was kind of amazing. Um, poor planning seems to
Yeah.
be like standard across the board. Nobody was really sure where the money was going. It was going to like maybe I think it was a trio of moderators, and then there was like one main person, and then people kept blaming each other for money going missing and things going wrong. People putting money in for groceries and then still having to buy their own groceries, not everyone having a car, people being like really confused about what the like bed situation was. There was alcohol present, but then there were some people who were under the age of 21 and no one was regulating whether or not those minors were allowed to have alcohol because apparently some of the minors were drinking. It was a whole thing. Apparently there wasn't, if I remember correctly, there was not like an that much of an age restriction on who could attend, which was very strange. I think for like a retreat, like a few days sleeping in a house with strangers. But I think there was like a book swap, and then there were some swag bags that were not swag at all, apparently. It was a
Not
whole
swaggy enough.
it was not swaggy at
That's what I mean.
all.
Yeah.
Swag less bags.
Yeah.
It seemed.
The yes, the book talk on Facebook. The Facebook group was huge. It was like
Yes.
300,000 people, and this like retreat came out of there. But because the Facebook group was so big, and there was like authors and readers, they got like supposedly, and nobody knows if it's true, if it was like lies or whatnot. But they were like boasting about a bunch of donations that they had gotten, like a bunch
Yes.
of money, a bunch of like supposedly even Colleen Hoover donated money to like
Yes. Oh
I
my
food.
God,
heard
they
something
said
like
Colleen Hoover donated.
$30,000 or
Yes, yes,
something.
yes.
Yeah, so they raised like so like
Mhm.
yeah, $30,000 or something
Yeah.
like that. Like it was a lot of money involved and a lot of hype about like all of the stuff that they had raised and collected for this event. And then they got there and it was like it was not giving what was promised. There was no food provided. There were only snacks. And then at some point it got really lawless and like then nobody was like following rules, like people were just taking things and like so there was like more alleged like theft happening at this event too, where people were taking things that what the like wasn't for them. And then ultimately people were saying that one of the organizers who was in charge of like these donations pocketed a lot of the money because they were like, where did the money go? And in response, they just archived the Facebook group. That was like, that's what they were like,
Yes.
oh, gotta go, actually. And they just archived the whole group.
They have apparently, because I did a recent video like a week or two ago, maybe a week ago, where I was going over off the top of my head a bunch of dramas that happened in the year, and I brought up the Book Talk Baddies Facebook drama, and someone said that after archiving it, all they did was change the name and they're back. So I don't know what their new name is, but also to note with the one person who is like kind of taking the fall for where all the money was disappearing to. Apparently, that one she left early, like she went home early because she said that her dog had died while she was at this retreat, and there were many allegations against her saying that she faked her dog's death to get out of having to face people. And then there was a subgroup of discourse about whether or not it was appropriate to accuse someone of faking their dog's death because that was a really serious allegation. Um,
I
and
feel like
I
I shouldn't
still
be
don't know
laughing
what
about
happened.
that.
Oh my God. Yeah, I was always wondering like what the resolution was of this. So
There
they
was
archived
none.
it.
That's
Yeah.
and
Nobody,
it
I
did and
thought
it's
somebody would sue. I feel like it seems like
no.
a group of people that'd be very
It was a
suing
whole thing.
happy.
But what was also happening was because like me and a few people were making videos about it. We were talking about it. And apparently like there had been drama with some of the same moderators in the past and like
Mhm.
moderators kept changing out over the years or whatever, or over the past like 1 to 2 years. And a couple things. Number one, because that group was so large, there were so many people in that Facebook group that had no idea that any of this was happening at
Mhm.
all. So when the group got archived and they were going online hearing the discourse, they didn't even know that a retreat was even happening. And they're like, "What do you mean there was a retreat and it went so wrong? It's on other platforms now."
Yes.
But
So there's something.
also,
Yeah.
there's like a long established like history of bad blood with former moderators for the group that had gone on to make their own Facebook group. And that I do vividly remember because it was all like the same name over and over again. It was like the Bookish Baddies, the Book Talk Baddies Taylor's version, the Book Talk. It was like a super long, and it was so many people being like, that's why I left the group to go to whatever. And it's just the same group over and over again.
Somebody in the chat said that they were part of the group and were wildly confused. So to your point about like because it was so large, it was like just I think it was they were in a house that fit like maybe 75 or 80
It
people.
was
Like
a really big cabin.
and yeah,
Yeah, it was
but
huge.
also there were like maybe like in some cases like 14 people to a room. So this was
Yes.
we're talking maybe hundreds of people of a 300,000 like people Facebook group. So I can imagine that it was a lot of confusion. I don't know if Rachel did this on purpose, but very serious allegation. Woof is,
Right.
is such a maybe intended but unintended pun there.
Very serious allegation, wolf.
Woof. Literally wolf. Yes. Yeah, pigeon forged cabins are not
Pigeon
cheap.
forged, yes.
Yeah, faking dog death is worse than fraud, apparently.
A
Allegedly.
legend.
You're darn right. It's on purpose. Okay. I think that I am coming. I don't want to be very like salesy about this. I'm trying not to be like, well, I run an event, but I do run an event. And here's the thing: I feel like for like the last few years, we always get a like one or two events that come on here that end up being like a fire festival or a dash con of like events. And I think the thing that really happens is that people just think, well, I can throw an event. I'll just do it, and they have absolutely no idea what they are doing or like the logistics, or they don't care to like get people, help them to think about the logistics, and they end up in trouble. And I don't know, I think the thing that bothers me specifically about this, especially as somebody who does run an event, is that nobody ever thinks, hey, I wonder what like small events already exist that I can support. Everybody just wants to start their own event. So we end
Yeah.
up in these situations where it's like, I don't know, somebody can just say, I want to start an event, and then they do, and then you show up and it's, booty, and like, but nobody thought that maybe we should like, I don't know, do some research or see who's putting it on. And the thing is that like, okay, booknet fest is right now the tickets are $45, $50, and you show up, whatever, it's a 2-day event. I think Readers Take Denver was like a $300 ticket. uh
Mhm.
so like if you show up and you're telling me I don't even have water for $300, like I'm
No,
pissed.
yeah. They didn't have water, and then it was being hosted at the Gaylord, and the Gaylord was charging an insane amount of money for water bottles at the event. If I remember correctly, they were charging $7 for water bottles
What?
at the Gaylord, and that was the only water people could get to if they didn't bring it themselves. But no, I think you are honestly like fully within your right. I'm If you weren't gonna plug Book That Fest, I was going to plug Book That Fest
Me
because
too.
Book That Fest was so much fun, and I'm so excited to go again. But also, these two events weren't even like the only failed book events to happen in the year, because it was Readers Take Denver. I'm referring to my notes. It was Readers Take Denver. It was the Book Talk Baddies Facebook group. It was the Detroit Bridgerton experience with
Yeah.
the lights on, a pole
I
dancer,
forgot about the
lots
pole
of
dancer.
confusion.
Wasn't there like two violinists or something?
There was like a violinist who I think was also a child. If I think it was a teenager.
Oh boy.
while
um
while the strippers like there with the lights on.
well, technically not a stripper because she did
Oh,
not get naked.
okay,
Pole
pole.
dancer
Got it.
in
Okay.
sexy clothing,
Okay.
who was struggling a lot with the theme and called herself the Bridgerton Fairy because she goes by Tink, and she had like themed outfits or whatever, but she wasn't super sure what Bridgerton was really whenever she got hired. But she usually does like a Tink the Fairy
Hmm.
type of thing. Like that's her character. So she tried to make it work for the event and was socializing with everyone and called herself the Bridgerton Fairy. And honestly, I think she's kind of an icon.
Yeah.
Um, but there
Maybe
was so
she
much. There were
hired
like
Joe
actors
Alstine.
that nobody knew how to interact with.
Oh my god.
It was, and then there was also, there was a failed ACOTAR
Yes.
Starlight Ball in.
Yeah.
Was that happening in London?
I only vaguely
It was
remember.
happening at a very special museum, and like super last minute, like a week, maybe a few days before the event was supposed to happen, it got canceled. And nobody could really understand why, because they were like, it was the people running the event said something about how like some of the vendors fell through and like something about money, but then other people were like, if you had done this correctly, you would have secured the payment with the vendors and with the location months in advance. Like you could not have possibly planned this event without securing the location first, but it seems like that's what they were doing. Um, and there was a lot of concerns about how the refunds were getting done because it was going through like personal accounts, not really like a business account. And a lot of people had already bought plane tickets and like booked hotel rooms and bought costumes, and we're still agreeing to like hang out or meet up and hang out. Um, anyways, but when you go to look at the website for that it was like the Starlight Ball, so I think that's what it was called. All of the photos were AI and kind of obviously so.
Yeah. I feel like every year too, something comes out of the JLA one. I forget what the event is called, but it's
Oh,
the romance
yes.
one. And I feel like this year, wasn't it that they were like, maybe I'm confusing the event, but there was one event where they were charging like the authors an obscene amount of money for their tables. A Polycon, thank you. Was it a Polycon this year that was like charging all this money? And so it started a whole discussion on Threads about like vendor fees for authors and whether or not it is worth their while to go to these events, even because of how expensive it is. So yeah, a big year for event fails in 2024.
I have a question for anyone who knows. These like Readers Take Denver, like all of these like really big book conventions, do they have like panels or like what are people just going to get like a book signed from their favorite author? Like what is going on at these events?
That's a good question.
I think it depends from event to event, but a lot of these like big romance ones are author focused. And so a lot of it is just like signing lines and meet and greets and things along those lines. I think there are some that do also have panels there, but the main focus is author signings and author meet and greets.
Interesting.
And
I feel
then,
like it's like a disservice to even call these things conventions.
yes,
Like,
yes.
in my mind, like I feel like there are panels, there are like other types of like events happening, like smaller things happening within a convention. But if it's literally just a meet and greet or like getting a book signed, like first of all, paying $300 for that is crazy.
Mhm.
Second of all, calling it a convention just doesn't seem to make sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. At BookNet Fest, there were panels with social media creators and authors, and there was a prom,
Yep,
and there were tables,
exactly.
and there was game
Started
night.
like closing out. They're like, I didn't know this was a sponsored ad.
Anyways, go buy your ticket for BookNet Fest right now.
Anyway, see you book it was.
And if you use my code,
Okay, we'll move on. Okay, in the horror community, this is a big year for talking a lot about misogyny in the horror community, and I'm only sort of like adjacent to a lot of this. I think I saw Naomi from the Mix Up Desk talking a lot about this, and Sam from Expert Book Smuggler, I think is her handle, talking about this because they're both actually big horror readers. But one of the things that came out this year was this author Otis Bateman was soliciting nude photos from women, and then he was sharing them with somebody else. So this other publisher, Stephen Cooper. And so people were coming forward and saying that this was happening. And I think that the whole thing about this conversation that like sent me to the moon, I mean, it's awful, right? Like you're being violated in this way. Stephen Cooper issued an apology, but his apology was basically like, I have to be honest, and I participated in this, essentially, he said, because he was in a bad place and he just wanted to be included. And so he wrote here also, like a few weeks back, we joked about not having received any unsolicited dick or tit pics. So when many others seem to be getting them, like he felt bad. Again, I know this is a little crude, but it was in private and it was meant to be jokey. It felt almost like a bizarre rite of passage in the community. And I admit I was down and a little woe me that I hadn't received any of the attention. Again, pathetic, I know, but that's how it felt. So he says that he accepted the pictures because it was a rite of passage in the horror community, and he felt bad that he hadn't received titty pics. So that's why he accepted them. And when I read his apology, I was like, actually, I've seen enough.
His apology was really, it was really strange because it was kind of saying sorry, but it was saying sorry in the way that was like, I'm the worst, but also won't anyone think of me, the victim?
Yes.
And it was really
situation.
Yeah.
It was so much. It was really long too. Like it was multiple. It was so long.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a teeny tiny snippet of a gigantic apology. That was really just like 0.1% apology, 99.99% explanation. Oh, woe is me. Please feel bad for me.
Yes.
Wow.
And then like the whole thing too, like this idea, right, that this was a rite of passage in the horror community and specifically in like splatterpunk is like deeply upsetting. But then obviously when like women were like, hey, this is harassment and like we shouldn't be doing this, they all, like a lot of these creators who were talking about this also got harassment for saying this. Like a lot of like and we will talk something very similar about in the dark romance community, but a lot of people sort of saying that like if you read horror and like splatterpunk and whatnot, like you should just kind of accept darker things. Like this is like the way that it is. So very bad vibes for women in the horror community.
Yeah, there was also a really weird point that was going on with backlash against the women who were speaking up about this, because one of these men, either Otis Bateman or Stephen Cooper, um, is married, question mark. And so um, people were turning on the women speaking up about like having their nudes leaked and shared and stuff like that by saying like, well, why would you involve yourself with a married man? And then it was because like some women were told he was separated or like getting a divorce, and some of them were told that he had like an arrangement with his wife or something, and people still aren't really sure like what it is, but still like at the end of the day not putting this much disgust or blame on the man who is married um for even like entertaining or like seeking out these other women. And it was really also like the content of the messages that were leaked between Otis Bateman and Stephen Cooper and like some other guys
Oh
were
yeah.
just like really disgusting. Like they were laughing
Yeah.
at one of these women's history of experiencing like rape and sexual assault, and they were just like sort of like, oh, she's crying about it again. They were like laughing about it in these messages. Like it's like there were layers to what was going on with these guys and implications of like a larger, because it was all happening within this one Facebook group. It was like this one extreme horror Facebook group with authors and readers together in like their own community. And then there were subgroups within that group. And there, from the way that people were talking about it, there's like implications of like a special subgroup with the men of the group, of the greater Facebook group, sharing the nudes like with each other. Like it goes beyond these two in this one Facebook group. Like there is potentially a subgroup of like way more people involved.
Which is like sort of implied in Stephen Cooper's
Uh-huh.
apology when he's like, everybody was doing it, and so I did too. Which, yes, when you think about like the larger implication of like what's happening in some of these like horror communities, like it is absolutely disgusting. Did this happen in 2024 as well? The horror author who wrote a review
last year.
I think it was. It feels very long ago. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just because this year has been 10 years, but it feels like last year.
So did this Otis guy ever make an apology? Did he say anything?
I don't know. Not
I
that
don't think he I think he went private.
yes.
And I know that a lot of authors that he was working with, including a woman that he co-wrote a book with that like had an upcoming release with him spoke out and like removed herself publicly from him.
Okay.
But it was a whole thing.
Wow. Yeah, I missed this one. I'm
Yeah.
just sitting here like in shock.
Bad year, hard year for the horror community and specifically women in horror. But and I mean, I say that, and knowing the thing that like is like really tough about it is that like the call out did not go very well. So you can only imagine that, like, I don't know, you hope that this doesn't continue to happen and perpetuate, but that was really rough. Okay, we've got another. Then we're moving from horror to dark romance. The sun is like beaming in my eye right now. Dark romance community. There was an author, Cassie Ruffle, I think is how you say her last name, who used this like. Okay, so kind of going back, there were clips of this man, Wade Wilson, at his trial, who he murdered 2 women in Florida. And clips of him at his trial started to kind of go viral on TikTok. I cannot tell you what the damage is and why this was happening, but this author specifically took a clip and said, like, if you like him, referencing the murderer, you'll love my book. And people were like, whoa there. Not only is that man a murderer, but he has like visible Nazi tattoos like on his face. And like, so this is not, you should not be romanticizing this. And if you think that the author apologized, you would be wrong. They doubled down and it, like started to post all of these things about like how they are, I don't know, how they were in the right and people were just like alienating them and like being mean to them or whatever. So like double, triple down on the fact that she's writing dark romance. And so she was just kind of saying, if you like this, you'll like her book, without realizing the actual implications, the harm to the family, like the racism involved in like promoting a Nazi this way. And yeah, she's still, I checked on her like Instagram today. This post is still up there. All of the posts are still up there and she's still doing her thing. Okay, this sun is like driving me nuts.
Yeah, this was like a really particularly like gross intersection of like the worst of the worst in the true crime community and like the worst side of book talk, sort of overlapping and joining forces. So this man murdered 2 women, Christine Melton and Diane Ruiz, and his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, also spoke up about domestic violence within their past relationship with each other. And he is also a very proud Nazi who, in these clips at the trial, was smirking, sort of like rolling his eyes, just sitting there completely unfazed by any of the descriptions of what was going on about what he had done to these women. Um, and yeah, Cassie Ruffle was posting these like thirst trap and like these photos of him doing that. Like, if you like him, you'll love my guy in my book. And what was really interesting in like her doubling down, she fully she was like, this whole thing was a joke to her. She posted that meme that was like one person standing in a crowd being like, yes, you are all wrong. But she also posted like the definition of what a dark or taboo romance is, and then just like left that up as if the source of as if this was all sourced from confusion on what a dark romance is. Um, but she was in the comment sections with people who were like, how could you thirst after like this guy? And she goes, I don't. Jeffrey Dahmer, on the other hand. So like she fully, that's like the type of person that we're working with, who has no problem just like admitting that she romanticizes serial killers
Right.
beyond this.
Right.
And it's a whole thing. And she's like completely unfazed. She reduced every sort of piece of backlash or criticism to just like people being haters and people just not understanding dark romance. And it was disgusting.
Yes.
Yeah, the amount of videos I saw, even outside of like specifically this author and like book talk, of people like romanticizing him and like making those like thirst trap videos.
There's so
Egregious.
much. So many of like I saw so many like true crime podcasters who were like, I just want to write to him. I just want to have an interview with him. I just want to understand. And it's like, no.
Understand why a neo-Nazi would kill 2 women? I
Mhm.
don't care to understand.
I don't. I have no interest. Yeah,
Like,
It's
you want to
just,
talk
like,
to him
not
because you have a crush
attractive
on him.
I
at all.
before I saw Cassie doing anything, what I actually saw were like the clips of this man, and in the comment section, Book Talk, the particular side of Book Talk being like, Book Talk is here. This landed on Book Talk. And I was like, Jesus, please send the flood. And then I saw that Cassie had done this, like, if you like him, you'll like this. So yes, not an isolated incident with this author. She's just the one that was like the boldest about it and got caught, but there were plenty of other women like in this comment section being like, Book Talk is here, Book Talk is here. So maybe it is okay if they ban the app.
At least we graduated to Luigi Mangione.
Jemila.
I don't think we should be romanticizing him either, but I guess of the two,
I thought you were gonna say like, cut that out. I was gonna be like, we're live, bestie.
Oh no. Hey, I'll stand on it. I don't romanticize him, and I don't think we should, but better him than this guy.
Than neo-Nazi, yeah, sure. I want to talk more about the dark romance community as a whole, but there's one more. I'm sure that there's more. If you guys remember anything else that happened specifically in dark romance or with dark romance readers, let me know in the chat. But this is happening right now. So this is The Canary Cowards by Jessie Hall. It was actually published back in 2023. It's got thousands of reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, and like 4+ star reviews. But somebody read it recently and went to Threads, I believe was the original place it was posted, to be like, hey, there's like something really racist in this book, and posted screenshots. One of the side characters is a Black man. He's nicknamed Candy because his name is Kane, and he walks into a scene holding a bucket of fried chicken with like 2 white women, and he makes a joke about liking white meat. This wasn't posted, but I'm currently reading this book, and so after he's first like introduced, he starts just like humping the air and doing body rolls like in the middle of the hospital. So this is the way that this character is.
Hospital.
Yeah, he's in the hospital visiting his friends, and he's like humping the air and doing body rolls. Another side character who is biracial also is described as having like dark caramel skin. So the vibes of this, as I'm reading this book, and I'm only a few chapters in, are just like dusty. These are like really dusty vibes. And so like the thing really is like, how did nobody catch this? And also like informing people. But the person who originally posted this, someone who claimed to be this author's husband was like, well, I'm her Black in scare quotes.
Oh yeah, in
Black
quotes.
husband. And she's like, and so that started this whole thing where people were defending her because she's married to a Black man. On Christmas, she actually posted a picture with her interracial family. Hasn't said really anything about this, but she did post that picture. And so yeah, like there's been a lot of defense of her from the dark romance community, and specifically I saw a video that like literally sent me to the moon, where it's like, we read about all kinds of dark things, like sexual assault and this and that, but we draw the line at
racism.
Oh, I just saw that video this morning.
I almost responded to that one too, and I was like, I don't have the energy right now.
Yeah, she was like, oh, so you can harass hockey players and you can read about rape, but you draw the line at racism. And I remember I left a comment.
I'm not that demographic that you're talking.
No, yeah, I left a comment. I was like, does she know? Like, I was like, who's gonna tell her that those people are fans of like this writing, like that the people who did these things are not making the critiques right now, that people have been critiquing all of these things. And she responded to me, she said, thanks for the engagement. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
You're welcome.
we're also going to talk about the election, but I got to tell you guys that post-election, I'm so over people, and I'm so like usually I approach things like trying to be like very like I don't know to educate, but I'm so over people because I think people are stupid. Like I've reached the point where I'm like actually
Yeah.
like we're dealing with very stupid people, and I think we should call them stupid more honestly because I feel like we're not doing that enough. I
Kindness.
feel
I've been trying, but then TikTok removes my comment for harassment and bullying. I told someone that I bet there's an echo when you flick on their forehead and it got immediately removed. I'm being silenced. I'm not allowed to be myself.
I'm dead.
because I feel like if you're making this argument, like and like you're actually not, I don't know, like we're not on the same level. We're not having the same conversation. If you're really looking at this and going, well, it's dark romance, so we can't draw the line at racism. Like
Which is so
that is an
strange.
idiotic thing to say, straight up, straight up.
Even with the other person that I stitched the other day, was it yesterday or like 2 days ago, who was like, "Oh, like, are you just mad because a white person wrote this? Would you be mad if like a person of color wrote this?" And it's like, yes, I would be. I don't really
That was a different video where she
That
was
was a
like,
different one.
oh,
Her video was
that one
so
was
long
really
also.
interesting. She was like, well, what if a Latina wrote this book? Would you still feel the same?
And I was
I'm
yeah.
like, well, yes, but also, what race do you think Latin is? Because she also said Latin. She was like, what if a Latin author? I said,
I couldn't get over
huh?
how frequently she said, "Let's call a spade in the wrong way." And I was like, what are we calling a spade a spade?
Well, words are hard for these people. Let's,
That's the thing
can
is
we
that whenever
please?
you engage with these people, they will immediately give you like clues that their understanding of like any of like you know just like racism, racial dynamics, or anything like that is like 20 years in the past, right? Like I didn't even have to get to the scene of this man walking in with a bucket of fried chicken because she's immediately calling him chocolate lollipop and dark caramel. Like it, the first thing I see is skin as food. You have not graduated from the conversations we were having 10 years ago. But I really don't need to like know more than that. And so if you're going to say Latin as a race, I honestly don't need to hear any more that you have to say.
Well, she
I
also
saw.
went, what about if they're Latin or Hispanic? And I'm like, okay.
I said I can't do this. But no, I saw a video a couple days ago. It was like from a white writer, like I guess aspiring author. She seemed really young, but she was like asking a question in earnest. She was like, "What are some?" She's oh, what was it? It was like I'm writing a book and I have this like black goddess character, but I don't want to like only use food to describe her. So like what are some good ways to describe a black person that's not food? And it was like an endless sea of like ochre, paint colors. What's wrong with using food? And like buried at the bottom, there's one that just says brown.
I mean, yeah.
And I think that's the hardest I've ever laughed. And that person got so much hate because they were like, there's different types of brown. What do you mean?
Have you
And
heard
I
of
think
white
one of the
brown,
next
medium
responses
brown?
it was like dark brown. And I think that just about sums up this really weird level of difficulty white writers are placing on themselves when it's so unnecessary.
I think too, like with this and with like this previous start, I don't know. I feel like I have tried to have this conversation and got jumped so bad, especially over on TikTok. But I feel like, and I know it's not all dark romance readers. I know that there are people there who are critically consuming, who are capable of like understanding. But the worst parts of the dark romance community are giving dark romance a bad name. Especially, like I think that it is a genuinely upsetting to hear someone say, well, we read all this romanticized rape. Why not racism? Like, are you hearing yourself? What is happening in that community? And the thing that also gets me is that it took a year for one person to read this and be like, huh? Because I guarantee my previous like thoughts would be like, oh, maybe people didn't notice it, but I think people laughed at it. I think people enjoyed it. I think
Oh, I think
people,
so too.
yeah,
Apparently, ARC readers told her about it, and it went ignored.
Yeah, I heard
There was
that.
someone who was claiming to be an ARC reader who said to have brought it up with her, like who brought it to her attention, and just got completely disregarded. So allegedly there were people before the book got published who brought it up. But no, yeah, but also like with it taking a full year, I think the way people are talking about the timeline of the existence of this book is so fascinating because in like multiples of these videos, especially the one who was like, you're fine with rape but you don't like racism, um she was like, and how are you going to hate on a book from 2023 when we're going into 2025? I'm sorry. What do you mean the deadline was a year?
there's a statute of limitations.
I was like, since when? Since huh?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Not all dark romance, but a suspicious amount. And the thing is that you can never have conversations about like dark romance, like the subgenre, in terms of like trigger warnings or the content or like the difference between portraying and romanticizing or things like that, because you immediately get hit with people saying like, well, I read for fun. Like there's a suspicious amount of refusing to engage with the content that makes these conversations nearly impossible. And it makes me wonder what the hell else is in some of these books that like is just like undiscovered until like one random person picks it up and is like, oh, hey, minstrelsy. Maybe we shouldn't have that in a book. And then this all pops off again.
I also
It's
just don't get this whole like reading for fun. So like racism is fun for you? Like
That's what I'm saying.
I don't get it.
Yes. And I, again, in the past, I would have said maybe like the ignorance, it was like my position. Like these people need to be educated. But now it is happening so frequently that I do actually think that racism is fun for them. I think they saw the fried chicken and I think they laughed. And I think that they thought that this was a good time.
I think so. But also, it a couple things. Number one, literally, this is like the exact a similar like same problem that happened with Tilly Cole, where people last year started bringing up how she just like has like two KKK romances, like two dark romances involving KKK members, like, and one of them, which was like the most egregious, was like a Klansman
Mhm.
falls in love with the daughter of like a Mexican cartel, and he unlearns his racism because he falls in love with her. But so much of the inner dialogue and the outer dialogue is him just like calling her slurs and being disgusted at her for being like Mexican and being disgusted and confused with himself for finding her attractive, and this magically heals him of being in the Klan.
Until it
And that those books
on
had
top
like
of that, which is
4
just
plus
makes it
like
funnier.
high ratings for
Yeah.
years before before someone who knows how to engage with work critically was like, pardon, she's also British. I will never not bring that up, by the way. This is
Yes.
a
So
British
funny.
white
It's
woman
so
who like
funny.
has this weird fascination with the
With the
KKK.
KKK. Yeah. Yeah.
That situation though, like I mean, it's obviously egregious, but that makes more sense why it went under the radar, because I feel like the like super like racist or problematic dude like who becomes not that through love or whatever, it's such a common trope. Like I feel like especially with like Nazi and like Jewish romances, which is like so strange. I don't know why that's such a popular subgenre. But yeah, like movies, TV shows, like I feel like it's so common to have like a character who is so deeply like problematic, like not become that anymore through the power of love or whatever.
Yeah, but also like with this conversation, it's my beef with like a lot of, especially like in the extreme horror community, like this issue of like you have this like with like dark romance readers and with like extreme horror readers, not all but too many, who have this genre, this like subgenre that's built on being like extremely dark and taboo in some way, and using that as like an excuse to shield their work from any sort of criticism about how that dark and taboo subject matter is handled depicted, where it's like, well, it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. It's supposed to be dark. It's supposed to push boundaries. And it's like, okay, but it didn't do it well and it's bad.
And I think oftentimes that is used like I 100% know that this author, Jessie Hall, did not write that racism as part of the dark subject matter that she was exploring. That racism is incidental. And now she gets to cover it up by saying, "Oh, it's dark romance." That was not intentionally part of what was supposed to make you uncomfortable. She wrote that character with a straight face as like a side character, and now because it has been called out, she want like her or her readers or her supporters want to say, "Well, it's part of the dark romance." It is not. It is not part of the dark subject matter that is being explored in any way. It is incidentally violently racist. So.
Is this book even dark romance? I thought it was like a sports.
It's like a sportsy things. I have heard other people call it dark romance. I have not seen anything particularly dark about it yet, so I don't know.
Well, there's racism, so it's
Yes,
dark.
Sure. Yes, Grimdark gets it all the time too, and that's like yes. What is the cover? I have no idea. It is a bunch of bad like clip art, all like layered on top of each other.
If you finish this book, I'd like to know your thoughts on like what you think the title means to all of this.
Okay, sure.
What do canaries and cowards have to do with any of this?
Okay, we got to move on. We had not one, not two, but 3 instances, maybe more this year, of people faking I don't know their race in order to support or progress their publishing career. So I think probably the biggest one that popped off this year was Freydis Moon, who also wrote under the pen name Saint Harlow, I believe. And this whole
and
thing,
Jupiter Wise and Taylor something.
Yeah, and under the name Freydis Moon was writing a lot or promoting their work as a lot of Latine, and turns out they're white. I mean, here's the thing about Freydis is that they to this day are still posting like it ain't no thing. Like their Christmas post was like, even though this like year had hiccups, it was still a great year. I was like, hiccups.
Hiccups? They called it hiccups.
Like they have doubled, tripled, quadrupled down.
You know when an entire thread is dropped revealing who you are and it shakes the entire like indie industry and all of your friends leave you because they're so betrayed and embarrassed.
Yeah.
You know?
You can still have a great year. And then
Hiccups.
it's like very trolling too, because it was like, for everybody who supports me, like thanks for being here. And for all of you who are just watching, wait till 2025 kind of like vibe. And so it's like very trolly, like very, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing and you guys can't stop me. So I honestly think that not only will they continue to post under this pen name, but there will be more pen names. So it's gonna
I'm sure there's already, and I'm sure like the moment that like thread dropped, I think it was like the middle of the year. I think it was summer when it happened, but I'm sure like the moment it dropped, they just like pulled out like the list of like names like in the vault that they had ready, and like, all right, this one's dead. Time for the new one.
So yes, the whole like reveal of that too was like just really interesting because it like rippled through the community. And the thing with Freydis, I think that was interesting is that they had built up a community around them that was super protective, where like in the past they had gotten into like some trouble or like people were starting to try and critique what was going on there, but their supporters like really like protected them and doubled down and like stopped a lot of that from penetrating. So like when it finally broke, you had not only like the implication of them faking their race, but also all of the people who were around them who felt super betrayed and who were defending them who felt super betrayed, and all of like the connecting of who all the different pen names were and like how it got revealed because they sent a work to a beta reader that was a work that that beta reader had happened to read before from a different different pen name of this author, and they connected the dots. So it was just like a very intense like few days of like the bookish internet while this was happening.
Yeah, it was a whole thing, but I think the whole thing with Freddy's movie that was really difficult is that the problem is that they are unfortunately like smart kind of. Like the whole thing is that like the person behind the Freddy's Moon like identity um is a white person who is fully aware of like the complexities of like the Latin American diaspora and the Latin American identity, and is fully aware that like white Latinos like exist, and that like being Latinx or anything, that's not a race on its own. So they leaned really heavily in being like a white Latinx person, a white Latina person, or a white presenting whatever, because they claim to be like mixed with like half white, half indigenous, but like they're white presenting and all of this stuff. And they had already had so many years of people accusing on social media like them of potentially just being a like non Latin American anything adjacent white person, and having like this like army of defenders be like, like stop invalidating like white Latinos, da, 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 da. Like this is like they're so common, you make people feel less than, like they're not like Latino enough, and da, 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 da. And they had built up that for so long because of their understanding of like
Yes.
the range of like the racial identities under this one like group. But
And the
no,
thing
this
about like
was
earning trust of like people within a community is then you then start to hear and can like appropriate their experiences, their verbiage. Like you like, I don't know, she was like boning up on like the right things to say in terms of like, ingratiating herself in a specific community. And yes, like afterwards, like people were coming out and saying that like Frades and Saint were ganging up on them, and there were like threads where like Frades and Saint were trading off in terms of like talking to people, but they were the same person. It was the same person. So they were like logging into different accounts to attack people from both accounts.
what was getting me was the person who came forward about being friends with Freydis online, but an enemy to Saint Harlow.
Yes.
So they were getting bullied by Saint Harlow. And then Freydis Moon was coming back around to comfort the same person that they were attacking under a different identity, which
So
I think
diabolical.
has to be
It's
one of the most
diabolical.
diabolical
Yeah.
uses of an alter ego.
Yeah, honestly, this is like nearing Mrs. Scribe levels of like deception.
That's
And
what people
manipulation.
were saying.
Yeah.
The second person here, Gracie, can you tell us
Kim
about?
Kim Krisky. Kim Krisky never made it to being a published writer, but was in a lot of these like would show up pretty frequently on Twitter with like these, I forget what they're called, but it was like these like writer highlights and stuff like that, people like self-promoting during certain times their books. Kim Krisky was writing a lot of these like interracial romances involving Black and Korean characters, which is like not shady on its own. But what was getting weird was the use of like hashtag own voices. And then people like sort of asking questions like, what do you mean own voice? Um, and going back and forth between putting the Somali and Korean flag in her bio and then just the Korean flag at a certain point in time. Her username was Kimchi. Um, pretending to be Korean, and still promoting these hashtag own voice stories with Korean characters until someone was like looking through her past like involvement and like frequency on these apps, and like people who know her from like writing retreats, and then people finding out her real name and being like, you are a white blonde Italian American woman who is not Asian or Black at all. um and there was like a really weird apology where she claimed to just like really not understand what the own voices tag was, even though she was using it correctly under this false identity. And then she sort of like disappeared. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last one is Colby Wilkins, who had two books, I think, one out, one about to come out, and claimed to be white and Indigenous American. And then this one was really weird because a nonprofit organization, it was the Tribal Alliance Against Frauds, came out and said that she actually had no genealogical connection to any indigenous ancestry. And this is an organization that people have had issues with in the past. So the organization itself has like critique and criticism, but they came out and said that Colby Wilkins did not have any sort of genealogical connection to to any indigenous peoples. And Colby Wilkins' response was that basically like saying that she didn't have proof because of the ways that like a lot of this, I don't know, like proving ancestry can be difficult for indigenous peoples, but also that they would immediately stop writing any sort of indigenous representation in their books. So it was like a very quick withdrawal. And so this one I feel like it felt really tricky to navigate to me, especially as somebody who is not indigenous, but it did happen. I think the one book that was coming out in 2025 is no longer coming out, and she will no longer be writing, according to her own statement, any books with indigenous characters as well.
Yeah, this is a kind of weird one to commentate on.
Yes.
It is tricky. But yeah, I don't know. It is, I think, regardless of whether or not she has like genealogical ties or is involved, like is a registered member of a tribe, like I think writing an indigenous character where you don't have like personal experience is interesting. Like it's one thing to like have a character who, and I don't know, like I don't know if maybe this is what her characters were like. I haven't read any of the books, but it's one thing to like have a character like you, maybe someone who's recently discovered that they might have ties to a tribe and they're like a reconnecting individual and writing it in that way, but to write it as if you're indigenous and talking about these this culture and all of its like all that involves in it is kind of strange.
Yes. I think also like for in each of these cases, the thing that sends me is this idea that you are adopting marginalizations in order to succeed in an industry that is primarily white. What are you doing? Like what is the psychology there of like pretending that you have to adopt a marginalization in order to succeed? Like I think something is super broken in that logic and in that like brain space in order to do that. Like I don't what is happening here?
Yeah. I think it's like the same logic that people use when they talk about like their hatred for like affirmative action, and they're like, well, if I identified as something, I would have gotten a free spot, da da da. But when you look at the demographics of whatever like company or school they're talking about, it's like white majority, 20% maybe like non-white diverse populations. And it's like, well, no. You already like have this upper hand, so like you seeing a special program get put in place to like to help balance out the numbers, that's not like a special booster above you. It's what what are we doing?
Yes.
I think a lot of white people just like don't realize that maybe they're not good enough. That sounds mean, but like I'm like, if you not being successful, like you not being successful or whatever, like that's a you thing, not like a person of color stole that from you kind of thing.
Correct.
Like there might be other factors, right? Like you can have a white person who's like disabled or chronically ill or, you know, comes from like a poor community. Like obviously those are things that are working against you, but like in general, like that's a you thing, not a people of color thing.
It also feels like a way that like people see communities coming together and doing things like, those like pitch fests that are for communities of color, or seeing like, Discord groups for authors of color, or seeing the way that Indigenous authors like represent and boost each other, and wanting that, and not understanding how to build community otherwise. There is a lack of understanding of community building within white spaces, I think. And so a lot of times white people only know how to invade other spaces, and I think that is some of the thinking that is happening here as well.
That's what I was gonna say. I think it's partially coming from this place of like envy of like seeing how other communities will show up and celebrate one another, how like people will be like, if it's part of my own community, I'm gonna automatically buy it. Like if it's part of this community, I'm gonna buy it automatically. And seeing that there is on some level like a guaranteed like buyer base for simply like something like ethnicity or race, and knowing that they that we are at a point in history where you cannot be like, oh my gosh, white people, I only read white books, I love supporting white people, I'm only gonna get this because it's white. And like knowing that like they're kind of like the only community that can't do that racially.
Well, they can't do that out loud, but it's
Loud.
happening.
Right, they can't
is
do it without being like told,
Yeah.
hey,
Hey. So you said that out loud, and usually you keep that to yourself.
Yeah, they can't say it out loud, but like, I mean, like we're at the end of the year, everyone is posting their like best ofs or like wrapping up what they've read, and it's like not a single person of color or author of color has made the list, and it's like, well, obviously you're doing this subconsciously.
And not only is it subconscious and like people are, but like systemically, that is what is being supported, right? Like you don't have to say, I only support white authors, because the system primarily supports white authors. So it doesn't matter. You can make no active choices and the system will feed you these authors. And so that's why there doesn't need to be the additional layer of like making an active choice to do something different, because the whole like sort of system is supporting a very white, very straight, very neurotypical sort of landscape. So
yeah, that's why you have so many people who are like, oh my god, you guys pay attention to the author's race. I don't do that because I'm not a weirdo who sees color. But then you look at the color of their bookshelves and it's just beige. Like it's just exclusively straight white beige, copy paste over and over again. And it's like, I'm sure you don't think you're paying attention to the authors, and I'm sure you're not, but what your default is is very the same.
Gracie, now you have to add someone saying this onto your bingo board for 2025, because you're manifesting someone being like, I only read white authors.
I know. Oh my god, I'm still in the works on like what my new bingo board is gonna be. Pending.
Everybody tune in next time. Okay. This one is book adjacent for two reasons. One, Kelsey impeaches Shay, who is really like a streamer. She worked for BuzzFeed and she got super, super big doing 100 baby challenge for BuzzFeed. So she plays The Sims, basically. She's got a pretty big community on YouTube. She is also about to release a book, I think in 2025, Voice of the Ocean. So she is going to be an author. That's one reason this is book adjacent. So the whole thing with Kelsey was when she was doing the 100 baby challenge is that she would start her videos and go, hi, I'm Kelsey, I'm single, and I'm going to have 100 babies, something along those lines. So her being single was like a big part of the branding of this like challenge. It's like single girl has 100 babies. So her community, like, I don't know, was always like super involved in like this idea of her being single. More recently, she started doing the 100 Baby Challenge again on her own challenge. And people noticed that, like, partway through, she stopped saying that she was single. And then very shortly after, she announced that she not only had a boyfriend, but that she was moving from California to, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest, maybe, to be with him. So it's like a huge thing that she finally met somebody. She was no longer single. And she posted on TikTok this video of the night that they met. They met at a wedding, and it was like a 360 camera, and like it was like very flirty, like immediately flirty. And so she was like, this is the night we met. It was like a chemistry sort of thing. And girl, someone,
This was crazy.
someone stitched it and was like, hey Kelsey, so that night when you met him, he was still my boyfriend. And it was this girl Dora, who was basically saying that like the relationships overlapped. And so when Kelsey first started dating this man that she left California and like moved to be with, he was still dating her, Dora. And so Dora had like screenshots and text messages like proving that like the timelines were all crossed. And the reason that this got bookish again because Kelsey posted her video, people were, Book Talk was immediately like, oh my God, this is so Resand and Farah coded. This is so. And Kelsey had replied and being like, oh, he actually is reading ACOTAR for me because it's my favorite book. And Dora, when she was like stitching and throwing out all her receipts, was like, actually, he read ACOTAR for me. He's not reading it for the first time. He read it with me. And she had the like screenshots to prove it, because this man would like flirt with her, like using like Resand lines and like being
It was a tough read. This was a really difficult like drama video because Dora had a bajillion trillion receipts, and there were things in these messages that you could not waterboard out of me. She like put herself on the chopping block, like to expose herself, like in her involvement of these really cringy text messages that were leading into like, they were borderline like ACOTAR like role play.
Here's the thing, though. Somebody said I'm going to cancel her title on NetGalley. I actually don't think Kelsey did anything wrong, and she like literally said nothing in response to this. I feel like Dora, the more that it went on to, like Dora was really like doing this for clout and whatnot. Here's the thing. Is that if you're in a relationship with a man and some girl reaches out to you and is like, hey, so he actually like crossed over between the two of us, like whether or not that matters to you is up to you. Mm-hmm. Like Kelsey had no obligation there at that point. They were broken up. If when they met, like it was crossover, whatever, that's none of our business. Yeah, this is interpersonal. This is not actually like drama that we should be involved in. But Dora brought it to the internet to be messy. Like there was no other reason than to bring this to the internet to be messy. And at the end of the day, if that man cheated on Dora, Kelsey is also betrayed. But people really turned on Kelsey. People were like all up in her comments, like shitting on her boyfriends, like saying all kinds of stuff. So it turned out to be like really, really messy drama. But I will tell you that those text messages from that man being like, hello, darling, like Resand would do, and like quoting lines, it like made me gag.
It was tough. I was like, oh, Jesus. But yeah, that was like really, I do understand why people went after Kelsey, because like it's TikTok and people just like to go after people. But yeah, like the whole thing with Dora is that like she had found out that there was overlap months after her and the guy had broken up. So it was like her looking back and like noticing like timeline issues. I think it was like with this video that she like was thinking back of like, oh, this happened. Like, oh, he went to this wedding thing when he was still with me. Wait a minute, and then was going back and checking like after they had already
reached out to Kelsey already. She had reached out privately, and Kelsey just like, didn't do anything about it. And then when Kelsey finally posted this video is when she like brought it all to the internet and be like, I reached out to her and she didn't say anything, so I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, it was like really weird. Yes. But like, if I don't know, I feel like Kelsey's biggest crime is like potentially just like choosing to stay with a guy who might have cheated on her for 2 months. And also
that's her choice. ACOTAR is her favorite book, which is also
ACOTAR's favorite book.
Yeah, like how did Sarah J. Maas get here? A great question, but it
And
was
also, I'm sure he's texting her the same way he was texting Dora.
pull up his
Shiver
Goodreads.
vomiting, actually.
I remember like seeing some of these screenshots of the text messages, and I read like a line, and I was like, "That's enough. I actually don't need to read the rest of this."
I'm laughing. I'm really sorry for both of these women is really the thing because neither of them deserve this. I mean, they liked it obviously when their man pretended to be Rhysand, but I personally feel like they both deserve better.
Sam really is at the scene of every crime.
Every single crime we can trace it back to Sarah J. Maas.
I think that might be the free space for next year's bingo board.
Just Sarah J. Maas. Okay, we are chugging along here. We've got two things that happened that these are, gosh, my words are like failing me, influencer related. So first we have Kiera Lewis of harassing hockey players fame. This year was featured on the Kelly Clarkson show in what was very obviously like a paid promo kind of spot. Like it was very inorganic and very like whatever. But the thing that got everybody talking about this is that Kelly Clarkson opens the like segment and she's like, there's a community for everything on TikTok. There's even a community for books, and Book Talk has their own queen, Kia, and that's how she like introduces Kiera Lewis, who then goes on to like talk about like romantasy, like it's this brand new thing. And when Kelly asks for a recommendation, she says Fourth Wing, one of the largest releases of the last couple of years. She mentions Fourth Wing. Honestly, I would not be surprised if this was paid for by Red Tower. That was like the vibe of it all, because like why would
that was the vibe.
Why would you go on Kelly Clarkson to recommend the biggest release of the last couple of years? I don't know. But the real thing that everybody got kind of upset about was once again that this woman was being called the queen of book talk. She did respond to this in some way. Basically, every time she gets in trouble, her response is very like, leave me alone. I'm successful and you're not. And also like
her response is, leave me alone. I'm successful and I have God on my side.
God on my side. Correct, yes. And all this godless heathens.
Got God and anime on her side, yeah. Watch out.
She has the power of God and anime on her side.
But she also said that she called herself like the queen of book talk. Like she hasn't called herself that in like a year or whatever. So but yes, she was rejected as our monarch. So that was her whole thing. She did also get into another little pickle towards the end of the year because she got on one of her platforms and was crying kind of after the election that Donald Trump got elected. Yes. And her community turned on her so fast.
Yes.
Her Trumpy community was not okay with her being upset about that.
It was on TikTok. She posted a video crying, and she was talking about like how this is an example of like the racism in this country and which I think is like the first and only time she's ever criticized racism on her platform ever. And oh my God, she immediately had to turn comments off. I unblocked her just to look because I was like, there's no way. But people were making videos about her. People were making like comment responses. They were like, basically just like, shut up and review books. They were like, oh, she's being so dramatic. Like, I didn't follow you for politics. I followed you for books and entertainment. Like, oh my gosh, you're like people, this fan base that she had curated was so horrified with her. Like that she would be like so outspoken against Trump. They're like, I didn't follow you for this. I followed you to be funny.
I followed you to be reading Harry Potter in 2024. Like, yeah.
No, I mean, I swear I saw comments along the vein of just shut up and get back to reading type of thing. Yes. I was like, damn, I'm not surprised by this at all.
No, like
it felt like very like for people, for white women primarily, to say that to a Black woman, it honestly like that is a thing when you don't form community around yourself. that like can support and protect you is that like a lot of these people see you as a like performer. It was giving very much like dance, like
go back to and jiving for us.
Yeah. You're not doing what we asked you to do. And she had like this real moment of like, expressing emotion, of being upset, of like, and they were like, no, we did not sign up for this. And it was like a tough to watch, but also coming from the person who says that they don't care about diversity, it was kind of like I'm gonna mind my business.
But it's interesting that she like never talks about it again. She goes back to it. Like,
yeah, because that was the other thing. It was right after that, and then she turned off the comments, and like the next day she like goes back, full face of makeup, super happy and upbeat. You guys, I'm having a meet and greet in, I think it was like New York.
Yes.
And she was like, we're gonna do a book swap and we're gonna take pictures, and then people were really upset. Some people were really upset with how that event turned out because there was like no one to like regulate how much people were taking, and so some people were waiting in line for like over an hour to meet Kiera Lewis of all people, and weren't able to get any books at all, and it was like a whole thing. But yeah, I went back to blocking her, so I can't really check, but I don't think she like went back to discussing anything political at all after she turned the comments off on that Trump video, which is so interesting. Like, to see that response from like your community and your follower base, and to know that it's wrong enough to remove comments entirely, but to just like go back to performing like they told you to, was, I think, quite a choice.
Yeah. Someone said, I almost wonder if that will cause a shift in her content over time. Probably not. I agree, probably not, because the thing with Kira at this point is that she is making money, and a lot of money, from doing a very specific thing. So it isn't like, you or I or whoever could like adjust their content and it would be fine to bleed like, a certain number. Like this is her business. And a lot of the things that we see her do is very specifically for money. Like there isn't a lot of like, I don't know, or it doesn't feel this way. I don't know this lady. I don't know her life, but it feels like very motivated by like views, by money, by business of it all. So I doubt that this will be a thing that like turns the corner for her.
Yeah.
I will say, if there is one niche that she like might pivot to in the future, I could actually see her pivoting to like anime and manga. Like I can see it, and
I need you to rebuke it right now.
I can see
put it on your bingo board.
Hey, take it back.
About her love of like Bakugo from My Hero, whatever that Academia. I can hear it in my head. It's she's like yelling in my head right now.
Put it on the bingo board.
Mark my words. She's gonna switch.
I might just put that on the bingo board. But yeah, that was immediately like post-election. That was a really like bizarre, and I should have expected it, but I feel like I had too much going on mentally to consider it. But like just how many influencers, how many like book talkers were going to show their ass like following the election results. Because like it was like this really solid 48-hour period of like people like Kiera Lewis like coming forward, like talking about like how upset they were about like Trump being elected, and then being met with like, shut up, stop making books political. And then there were so many people who were outing themselves as being Trump supporters by either being like very bold about it, like boldly claiming it. Like there's that one guy, Jacob, who ties into the Callie Reed's drama that's there. But who like came out as a Trump supporter, and everyone like his follower base was like, what the fuck? Like, why? What? Because he has like majority like women followers, and he was like, why can't we all just get along? Why can't we just agree to disagree? And like so many people being like, I don't care who you voted for, I just came here for fun. And that was really weird.
The like we're going to talk a little bit more about keeping politics out of books or book talk or whatnot, but that guy Jacob is this girl Callie's ex-boyfriend, and this girl Callie also got into she had drama before, one time when she was unhauling books that people had sent her from her wish list. She was like holding it up and being like, I'm never going to read that, after people had like sent it off her wish list. And like a few things like also with Jacob and the end of their relationship. But this year she got into hot water because a few authors came out and said that they had they would either reach out to her or no, Callie would
She was
proactively
reaching out to them.
and be like, hey, I will read your book and like review it for X amount of money. And so some of these authors took her up on the offer, got into loose agreements with Callie that they would pay her, she would read their books and promote them, and she never did. She never delivered on any of those. Callie came out and said that she had been in and out of the hospital and very sick, but she also like what at that point hadn't refunded anybody any of this money, just kept like giving them the runaround of like, oh, I'll post it, and never posting it. I think like as all of this came out, she may have refunded some people after that point, but also like her response to all of this was basically very blasé, very like, you guys are going to forget about this in a week and it doesn't matter. And
yeah,
then
that's literally what she said.
and then very quickly after announced that she was writing a book. So she followed this all up with being like, and by the way, I'm writing a book. So it was a very interesting progression of things that happened.
She also changed her username, I think, to try and cover the tracks. So like when people were searching for Callie's reading, she's now Callie Reads, which is so different. But no, yeah, that was a whole thing. Because she also, one of the other controversies, she was familiar to me when she first got controversial with her like ex-boyfriend, like early this year. I remember like when it happened because I'm in Houston. I had no power because of Hurricane Beryl. So that's when this was happening, because I was looking into this out of boredom because I had nothing else to focus on because Beryl was happening. So that's the timeline, in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah,
In case anyone wants like a general year timestamp, it was in the summer when Hurricane Beryl hit Texas. But she was familiar to me because of that thing where she made that video where she was like, these are books I'm never gonna read, and people were like, wait a minute, you're holding up physical copies of things I saw on your wish list that were sent to you. And then she made that follow-up video that was like, well, I didn't mean I was never gonna read them, I just meant that I'm not gonna read them for right now. And people were like, that's not what never means.
Also, why would you uninstall it if you're not?
That was the thing. It was, she deleted the videos, but she also, I remember towards the end of the year, she had it was like all this discourse about whether or not she lies about reading the books that she reviews, because she had done a review of this one like Nutcracker inspired dark romance.
Oh no, not that book.
And she made a review, like a negative review, like talking about how much she disliked it. And the author responded and was like, hey, some of the things you're describing didn't happen. Some of the things that you said that you took issue with, like the presence of certain things, were in the content warning list, so you should have expected it to be there. And like certain things weren't lining up, and so a lot of people were like, did you actually read this book? And that was the whole thing. So like when Beryl hit in the summer, her ex-boyfriend Jacob, who is another book talker who like got a platform off of being her boyfriend or whatever from like a year prior. I did so much research. I had nothing to do in this house. I vividly remember that I was on this case. There was he made a video. I remember he was like he came up, his arms were crossed like this, and he was like, a little birdie told me my ex was talking shit on live or whatever, which is something I still don't have confirmation about, because she was allegedly talking mess about him on a live stream, allegedly. And he was like, a little birdie also told me that she just celebrated her whatever like 6-month anniversary with her new boyfriend, but we broke up 5 months ago. And then that was the video, and it went crazy viral, and everyone who followed him was already familiar, like followed him because like he got this following from Callie initially, so they knew that it was about Callie. And then Callie immediately like shut off comments on everything and like was not posting for a couple days. And then people were asking him why he would post this, that he's just being messy. And he said in a follow-up video that he was standing up to a bully and all of this stuff, leading into like him like leaving a bad relationship with someone who was like a bully. And then Callie came back like a day or two later and was talking about how it was all a misunderstanding about timelines, how she's not a cheater. And then Jacob had posted something about how he apologizes, but he never took back the claim that she cheated. And this cheating allegation was happening the same week as Kelsey from BuzzFeed.
The week for cheaters.
Because this was the week I checked cheating scandal off on my bingo board.
You know.
And then he apologized kind of, and then he took that video down. And then he made some other video, and it was like this whole back and forth. And then he came back a while later, talking about how he was blackmailed by Callie into saving her image because he has past sexual assault allegations against him, and she was holding that over him, which she potentially might have admitted to in that video that was very blase, being like, you're all gonna forget about this in the week, because she talks about the drama with her ex. She doesn't name Jacob, but there's only one ex that she could have been talking about, and she was like, if you knew the stuff I had on him, and and almost like confirming the blackmail situation that was happening that he's alleging.
But he also his like whole thing where he was like talking about he was being blackmailed. He was like, I have sexual assault allegations, but they're like lies.
Yeah, he says,
so
according to him,
yes.
According to him, the allegations like aren't true because like someone who knew him knows someone who's making the allegations, who's talking about a different Jacob. So people thought that it was him, Jacob, and it was like a past coworker and all of this stuff. And honestly, with Callie, he says that like that was something that they discussed early in their relationship. So it's one of those things where like either Callie believes these allegations to be true and still stayed with him, or Callie believed these allegations to be lies and then used it as blackmail material after they broke up, which like really doesn't fare well on her either way. But yeah, and since then Jacob has very proudly outed himself as a Trump supporter with no remorse on that front. So it's a whole thing.
Yeah, interesting. She blocked me.
Oh, she blocked you.
I don't know why. I discovered this sometime after the getting the books from her followers scandal and this whole Jacob situation. And I don't even think I was aware of this stuff until later. It was really the scamming authors situation where I went to go look at her page and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then I went like on a private browser on my computer and found her. And I was like, why am I blocked? I don't think I've ever commented on anything related to her. I don't know.
I honestly respect anybody's like right to block, but it drives me nuts. I want to know what I did.
I want to know what I did. I don't know what I did. You just blocked me.
Okay, next up we have It Ends With Us. Like there is so much here. There's so much here. So
there's almost too much here.
There's almost too much here. So I want to go ahead and like acknowledge that right now where this is standing is that Blake Lively has sued Justin Baldoni, and there's like harassment allegations here as well, in terms of it being basically like on set, right, that he was doing inappropriate things. And so there's this whole like piece of it now that is much more about their relationship, about the harassment, about the lawsuit, especially coming off of the fact that like her image suffered a lot during the promotion of this movie. We can talk about that for hours, and like the idea of like the perfect victim, and like absolutely not liking Blake Lively is not a reason not to believe her. Also like the media spin of this all and how people fell into sort of like the spin that was happening without realizing it. And I think I saw a lot of people processing that in real time and being like, oh, like I did the thing that like, you know, he was paying people to do, and I got caught up in that spin. So a lot of like different pieces of it. I think that I think that that is probably more important than the thing that I want to talk about, that is like the bookish part of this. And that is kind of going back to the movie itself, the adaptation, and the promotion of this. Because the thing is that Colleen Hoover in the past has been very, her work is mismarketed and purposefully so as romances, and like her whole history of not liking trigger warnings, of like promoting her stuff with like coloring books and nail polishes and things along those lines, specifically tied to this book, which is a book about domestic violence. I thought it was so interesting to see people who have none of that context, maybe not everybody, like not everybody is a book reader, also reacting the same way to the promotion of the movie. And like the wear your florals and bring your friend, and everybody's like, is this a movie about domestic violence? And it was like I wanted to scream, because like it was the stuff that we've been saying about Colleen Hoover from the beginning, and the way that she positions her very emotionally manipulative books, and we were seeing that real time like with the movie itself. And I think that that was like part of what happened with Blake that got her so much on people's bad side, is the way that she was talking about the movie, the way that she refused to engage with like the subject matter of the movie and domestic violence and like all of that, which of course, like I want to reiterate, all of that is separate from the harassment and does not mean that we cannot believe her when she's talking about what happened on the set. But I just thought it was like a really interesting point for the book community to see this like come full circle from a Colleen Hoover book.
Yeah, this was always like from the moment that this project was announced, I knew it was going to be so bad. And like every new update was truly the worst update you could have gotten about it, from like the onset photos of the wardrobe, which still haunts me to this day, to like the casting choices, to like the rearranging of like age groups, to like how it was promoted, like from like Blake Lively and like the general like team on the film, but also like again like from Colleen Hoover. Like she's been really consistent and not properly advertising this book in particular, which is really frustrating because like I don't know, like y- this whole issue of like her books constantly being marketed as romance, and her being positioned as a romance novelist when like in interviews she doesn't even consider herself a romance author, is genuinely like very frustrating. From the way that she's described herself in multiple interviews, she considers herself just like a contemporary drama writer. Like she doesn't even describe her own books as romance, but when it comes time for promotional material, they're romance novels. And that's really, really frustrating to me, because it's setting people up to be like jump scared by everything else that's in there constantly.
Someone asked, do you think that her image could recover a bit?
Who? Colleen Hoover's or Blake Lively's?
Like, yeah.
It
I'm
already
not
has.
sure, because the thing with Blake Lively's image and all this stuff, a lot of it was hurt by the promotion, but a lot of it was also hurt by like old interview clips from separate projects, and like her and Ryan Reynolds getting married on a plantation,
Mm.
and like separate things that are like so beyond this project now. Um I don't know. A lot of people already like went into this movie and this project not liking her, and this was sort of like the final straw for a lot of people. I'm not sure it's like really easy to bounce back
Yeah. What
from
were
a
you
lot
going
of
to say?
this.
I kind of think it is already bouncing back, just based on how I'm seeing people talking about this lawsuit. And I feel like the people who don't like Blake Lively are like mostly women of color and Black women because of the stuff that she's done in her past. And that is not the majority of people who are media consumers. So
I think
I
it's such a weird intersection of things happening here, because I feel like there is a section of white women who 100% will sort of like rally around their own. There are like the Black women and women of color who are like, nah, never again. But there is also like like even from within women, sort of across the board, like the inherent, like the internalized misogyny that is still like, I never liked that woman. Like Justin Baldoni is a feminist. He would never, like there's still like a fair amount of that happening, at least in comment sections that I have seen. So it's like really, I actually don't know how this is going to fall out. And I think it will be, I think that is yet to be seen, considering how this complaint keeps going, if it gets like goes to lawsuit, if anything else comes out, because there could still be other things that come out that we haven't heard yet. So I think it's kind of sitting in that intersection of where it could tip either way. But I don't think, I have trouble also because I just don't find her very likable, which I know is like I don't know. I don't find her. I don't the way that she approached sort of talking about this was so out of touch. Is really the thing that I want to say. It's not a likability thing. It's like an out of touchness with her and the way that she carries herself and expresses herself that is like difficult for me to gauge like how much of that is being informed when I'm looking at this, trying to look at this sort of like being like, what's the public perception like? Because I feel that way about like her sort of being out of touch.
Yeah, there's like there's a really noticeable manufactured attempt to be charming in a lot of her interviews,
Yes.
even like
Manufactured.
beyond this press junket that just like rubs a lot of people the wrong way.
Yes.
Even though like I fully acknowledge that being professionally charming like is part of her job description. Um, I just don't think she pulls it off very
Yes.
like naturally.
Yes. Agreed.
I saw someone mention Amber Heard in the comments, and I do feel like this is different just because Blake Lively has had a longer career. Like people have loved her for a long time. Other people mention like Ryan Reynolds, people's love for him also protects her. I think that's true too. But I also just think like Johnny Depp was much more beloved than like Justin Baldoni is. Like I don't think a lot of people like totally know who Justin Baldoni. Like I didn't know who he was until this movie, to be quite honest.
Yeah, a
Yes.
lot of people only know him from Jane the Virgin and
Yes.
like nothing else.
Oh, okay, I didn't even know he was in that. So
He's like the main love interest. I didn't watch it, but I know his but I do remember being thrown off because I think his character is Latino and he is not.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, so yeah, there's that. I think like Johnny Depp is a much bigger, more popular. He's also been around a lot longer than Justin Baldoni. And like comparatively, like Blake has more, I guess, reach and popularity to him in this situation.
Yes.
And all of the other factors of like Ryan Reynolds being her husband and also just like the cast seemingly rallying around her over him.
Yes. I think also the overcorrection piece of it, I think is a lot of people coming face to face with like the PR machine of this all and feeling very like, I don't know, like personally affronted by being caught up in that and be, like kind of correcting to the other side and being like, oh, we were lied to. So I think that is a piece of that as well. I don't know, seeing like the whole smear campaign aspect of it all, I think has people in certain feelings. Okay. Anything else about there was too much. I know we just like glossed over the surface of it, but
I just wanted to interject with breaking news.
Okay.
Jimmy Carter has passed away.
I did. If you heard my text message go off a little bit ago, it was my sister letting me know that Jimmy Carter has passed.
Okay. Yeah, I just looked at my phone just now and saw a bunch of alerts and I was like, oh, R.I.P.
R.I.P. Jimmy Carter.
What the heck?
I know. He was
He looked like he had been dead for a long time.
He did look like he was 1 foot in the grave for a little while, but
to be fair, he's like 100, so that's a pretty long life.
He lived a long life.
Yeah.
I like that we had a breaking news interjection.
No, truly, I thought it was going to be something related to the comment section of people just now finding out that Justin Baldoni's Italian.
Yeah.
And all of this stuff. Someone just got to the point in the live stream talking about Kiera Lewis being constantly like, God is on my side, but harassing hockey players, and you're like, breaking news. And I fully expected this to be relevant.
Sorry, it was not.
Okay, we're almost done with the drama and discourse, I think. But this, this is about Red Queen and Powerless. So recently, Victoria Aveyard did a video where she described Red Queen. She's like, would you read a book about blah, blah, blah? And she described the plot of Red Queen. And people were up in her comments being like, so Powerless? It sounds like Powerless, and accusing her basically of copying Powerless, which Powerless came out in 2023. Red Queen came out in 2015. Victoria Aveyard had talked previously about this. She had talked previously about how similar these books were. So I don't know if she did this purposefully, like describing it in a way to highlight their similarities, but it worked and it didn't work because she got it was a big backlash in her comments of people not only like trying to accuse her of plagiarizing from Powerless. But then also when she came into the comment section, as you can see in the slide, and was like, you know, Red Queen came out in 2015, people were so bold and they were like, well, I like Powerless better. Powerless is better, like all over her comment section as well. She did get a fair amount of people also defending her and being like, Red Queen is a blueprint, you know, all this stuff, which I find hilarious. I find this so funny because Red Queen is actually one of the most derivative novels I have ever read. Red Queen itself is a copy of all of the 2012 dystopians that came out. Like there's nothing original in Red Queen. So the idea of like it's like a domino effect of plagiarism at this, or heavy inspiration, we shall say. It's not really plagiarism. It's a domino effect. So people coming and be like, no, Red. And it was so funny. People were like, I read Red Queen in middle school. And I was like, yeah, it was new to you when you were in middle school and you read this in 2015. But they're like, Red Queen is not the blueprint, but also Red Queen didn't plagiarize Powerless because it came out first. So that was the whole sort of discourse that happened there. Have you guys read either of these books?
No.
I read Red Queen.
Yeah.
It was one of the first books I read when I was getting back into reading, because I had this copy since I was in high school that I never got around to reading. And I was like, well, why not? It's the pandemic. I'm stuck here. And I was so angry. It pissed me off so bad. Yeah. I gave it a 2-star at the time, but probably is like a 1-star to me in retrospect. But it was so bad, so derivative, and just like you can tell that it was trying to be like the Hunger Games.
Yes.
But it just and this inspired like this whole thought process of YA dystopians of the time post Hunger Games, and how they're all trying to be Hunger Games but without anything to say. And so you have like these people who like clearly like know nothing. And like Victoria Aveyard very clearly, I think she grew up like pretty wealthy, is pretty wealthy. Like it just felt like someone cosplaying like poorness, especially in the way that she wrote Mare, the main character. It was just so frustrating. And I'm like, how? And this ended up being like, I guess, a premonition of what was to come with romantasy and popular book talk books. But like how you have a character who has suffered so much oppression, and then a hot guy comes in and she's like, what do I do? And I'm like,
a hot guy in all black with an X in his name for some reason.
Right. Like they come in and like her love interests are like these two princes, and it's like these are quite literally your oppressors, and you're like, I don't know what to do. And I'm like, 2 seconds ago you were saying how much you hated the monarchy.
Yeah. You told it real quick, girl.
So quickly.
It's a little bit awkward because Victoria Aveyard follows me on social media, and so like and I think that it's like I don't mind her content, and especially when she's talking about writing and things like that, like I don't mind her content. And I think in this case, like she was done dirty by all of these like children who were left behind, who don't know, who have like no concept of anything except for the thing right in front of them, right? That like have no idea about, and like a book that came out prior to, you know, one before the other, like absolutely no connection of the dots or whatever. So I do feel like she caught flack where she didn't need to. We follow each other in social media, like it's a whole whatever. But this book is it's like not good. And so it's not good. And I'll never forget, I was at an event at the very beginning of her career. And I would imagine that she would not remember this and deny it like now if she was ever asked about this. But the way that she spoke about writing this book was very much, I woke up one day and decided to write a book. She read YA and she thought I could do that in a way that felt, and when you read this book, it actually feels like somebody asked Google, hey, Google, how do I write a YA dystopian? Like that is the feeling of like just copying what other people had done. And her story, her parents, she says that she did not grow up wealthy. She like swears up and down that she didn't. Her parents are 2 educators. They're teachers, lifelong teachers or whatnot. So I don't know. She is wealthy now. She's very wealthy now. I don't know. But her story is that she went to film school. She wrote this book. She sent a first draft to a contact that she had from film film school, or like an agent or something. And that person was like, oh, I'm not really doing this anymore, but I just sent your book to an agent that I know in New York. And that agent, who got her unedited draft of her first book because of a contact, was like, oh, sure, like I'll take it, and we'll edit it. And that's how she got acquired. So like very connected sort of path to publishing that she went through, and that was Red Queen. So she's had like a very charmed sort of like publishing story, and so I don't know, it's a very weird sort of place to navigate when she presents herself in a certain way. And then to see everybody talking about Red Queen like it was like this, like it is the blueprint instead of something that is like in a long line of other works, is really interesting. And then for Lauren Roberts to have married Red Queen and the Hunger Games so shamelessly, it was like a whole other piece of this story as well.
Yeah, I haven't read either book. Whenever I was first hearing about this happening, I was like, why haven't I seen any of this? And I went to go search Victoria Aveyard's account, and I noticed that I blocked her for some reason. So I don't even know why I had beef with her previously. But I went back to blocking her because I trust the old Grapey's in judgment. I'm sure I had a reason. But yeah, it was really bizarre, like having to explain to people that you can just like Google the titles of a book and know what year it came out.
Yes.
Really interesting. I feel like a lot of people just don't have the instinct to like look things up. Like if I saw that video like not knowing anything about Red Queen, and I like knew about Powerless, and I'd be like, oh wow, that's really bizarre. Like, did this person copy Lauren Roberts? I would like go and look Red Queen up on like Goodreads and see when it came out, and I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I wouldn't leave a comment and move on with my life.
So
You know,
people don't want to be curious anymore. It's
Everybody
very
is
sad.
People are incurious, and then there's also such a like some we said earlier at some point in this live show to bring back shame, because there's such a commitment or like an okay sort ofness with being loud and wrong. Because if I was like, A sounds same as Powerless, and the author was like Red Queen came out in 2015, I would be embarrassed.
I would delete my comment,
I
and I would
delete my comment.
never.
I would immediately. But people get corrected on TikTok, and just like it slides right off of them. They do not care to be wrong.
I do think that's in some of the comments, like not all, but in some of the comments when she did respond that way, like I think people were very clearly embarrassed by that and like pivoted hard and was like, oh my God, should I read this book, guys? Should I read this book? And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, they either got like really embarrassed and tried to get back on her good side, or they got really embarrassed and they were like, well, Powerless did it better.
Yeah.
Still not having read it.
Yeah. Like, it's not a sense of shame that makes you reflect and like, oh, maybe I should just delete this comment and move on. It's like they do feel the embarrassment. It's just making them act out even more in different directions.
Like, maybe I'm embarrassed. Maybe I should delete this comment, and maybe next time I should pause and look something up for once before like the comment. No. That's not going to happen.
Not at all. Yeah. I mean, I haven't read Powerless, but I do fully believe that Red Queen is probably better than Powerless.
Oh, I agree. I gave Red Queen 2 stars, and I tried to read Powerless, and I quit within 1 chapter. So,
and there you go.
I don't know if Rachel's still in the chat, but she read Powerless and she hated it.
Yeah, I watched her video and I was like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Red Queen is probably better than this.
Yeah. To be fair to Victoria, if you're reading this, girl, I'm so sorry. Or if you're watching this, to be fair to Victoria, I do also believe that Red Queen is better than Powerless. So, okay, Piper CJ. This was so funny. When I was trying to like collect things that had happened in 2024, I was in my Discord and somebody was like, didn't Piper CJ do something? And I was like,
Piper CJ always does something.
Piper CJ always does something. And I could not for the life of me remember what she did this year. But this one was not much to say here. It's just Piper CJ being Piper CJ in terms of like her marketing. So right before Thanksgiving, I believe this year, later, she got on and was crying about how she got this letter from like an interested third party, which she didn't ever say was her agent, but it has to be her agent. It wasn't the publisher, she said outright. So it had to be the agency that said basically that because she wasn't on the bestseller list for long enough, that essentially they were like threatening her that she was going to be like on the hook for money or something along those lines. And so she was like being very tearful about how she was in trouble, and she thought that her job as an author was only going to be to write the books, but now she's like in trouble for not selling enough and not marketing enough. So could you please, pretty please, go buy her book because it would help her so much.
This was conveniently a few weeks before Christmas.
Yes. And then, of course, everybody was like, hey, girl, that's not how publishing works.
So many people, I learned so much about how publishing and promotion works because so many people from like different areas of publishing all saw this video and were like, as this section of the publishing industry, this sounds really illegal. And it was everyone being like, who is this person? And she was like, a third party that's not my agent and not my publisher, which only begs the question why you wouldn't just ask your agent or your publisher to be like, hey, is this like, hey, professionals in this industry?
I think she was implying that it was her
It's
agent.
her agent. Yeah, she says it's not my publisher. I don't know if later she said it's also not my agency, but the very strong implication there was that it was her agent was saying this.
And she was
Very
liking
strange.
comments of people being like, is it your agent?
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yes. The thing is that this was about her middle grade series, and middle grade is very difficult to sell. And so there's a whole thing here. And there's a world that my best interpretation of this is that her agent reached out and said, hey, middle grade is a tough market. Like we didn't sell enough where, it's viable to sell more of the series or sell another series or whatnot. So it is what it is. And she used that as a jumping off point to come and cry on the internet. That is my best read of the situation. Like at worst, I don't also put it past her to just make this whole thing up. But I don't understand why you would want to alienate your agent in this way. Like they're going to watch this and be like, what the hell? So like, what's going on here?
No, her follow-up was really funny though, because she was like, so since then I've learned a lot. We've had a lot of really good conversations or whatever. And she was like, she kind of like accidentally outed herself as not having any friends in the publishing industry, like not having author friends. Because she was like, this is why these conversations are so important. This is why we need to talk to each other. It's so easy to be isolated in this industry. Like we need to be talking about things when they happen. If you had author friends, you could have texted them directly, but like, hey, is this normal? But she didn't. She didn't ask anybody actually. Like she didn't ask if this was normal. She said, hey, this is happening. Please buy my book. Like she immediately switched to like pleading with her target audience and was like, hey, please buy this, instead of even trying to have a conversation that she says is so important. And like so many authors were in her comment section being like, this isn't legal or normal to do. Like, what are we talking about right now? And she was like, so many great conversations. This is why talking about things is so important.
Me too, because like when she, in that initial video, she starts promoting like her adult books first.
Yes.
I think
And
that's
then
what's
then
also
talk about her middle school or middle grade book.
that's yeah. She's built a really strong platform, like promoting that one main book that's like adult sapphic pro sex work and like she's garnered this really like adult audience. So I didn't realize she had a middle grade, which like isn't to say that like adult writers can't or like aren't gonna whatever like make children's books or anything, but I feel like she had to have expected it to be like pretty difficult to have that big jump of like explicit like adult subject matter that's like her main bread and butter, her niche that she went viral for multiple times over for multiple different reasons, and then to make this jump to middle grade of all things. And like girl, you're gonna struggle with it given like what you've already established as your target demographic.
Oh, you called it sapphic and you're not allowed to call it sapphic. Did you remember all that?
Oh my god, it's bisexual.
I'm dead.
Can't call it sapphic. She'll get mad.
Oh my god,
So weird.
sorry.
I just like fully.
It's her
believe she's
bisexual
lying about
fantasy.
all of this.
You what?
I fully believe she's lying about all of this. I
Yeah,
don't have a
I-
charitable read at all. Like, I think it's either one of two things. She concocted this up with her agent to get more press or whatever,
Mhm.
and then, or I think maybe she's having difficulties with her agent and thought this would be a route to like send hate towards her agent or like force her agent to do something that she wants.
Yes.
I just think she's lying about it all. Like, I just genuinely don't understand. Like, even the charitable read that you have, like, that's just such a wild, like, deep misunderstanding of like what is going on or how any of this works, that I don't understand why you would, especially as someone who's trying to like do this woe is me, like, I don't know, I don't have any friends in the industry, to like then make this very viral video accusing your agent of doing something that just doesn't seem like what someone in her position would have done in
The
this.
thing is that, like, from the beginning, the way that she sold all of this and has gone viral with all of this has been from that place of like, she wrote a story when she was kicked out after coming out, and like then she wrote it in 7 days or something like that, and then she published it. She didn't think anyone would read it, and like that's the whole story. But the thing is that when you do pity marketing, is that you always have to like one up the pity. Like the pity only goes for so long, and so she needs to continue to like revitalize why people will feel bad for her, to like find new ways to cry on camera. And so it's just like, that's why every year we're like, Piper CJ did something again, because she's just like constantly sitting in the space where she needs people to feel bad for her in some way. And whether that's because, oh well, she just reacted poorly to a review and she didn't know any better, or well, now people are saying her stuff is racist, and if you say her stuff is racist, you're horror-phobic, or like now her agent is saying that she wasn't on the bestseller list long enough. And the thing is that people eat it up. Not everybody.
Mhm.
But she has
a lot of people do, though.
a lot
of
eat it up.
people.
She has like defenders, and they will come for you if you say anything bad, and they like do not see like the manipulation here, because they buy into the fact that this is a woman who is being oppressed by whoever, and that the only way to help is to not only buy her book but to defend her to the ends of the earth. Okay, you want to add this to your I'm just giving you inspiration, Gracie. You do your, but she'll pretend someone burnt her books because they're queer.
or claim that someone's being like horror-phobic, because we're entering the Trump years again. So I think
Sure.
she's probably gonna like take the misogyny angle or the queer-phobic angle.
I wonder if she's going to be one of those authors that claims that she's experiencing book banning because maybe like a store doesn't want to stock her books.
Yes.
Or something.
And it's
that is not book banning.
Sure. We can only wait and see for 2025. We've been doing this for 2 hours now. Are you guys okay?
I'm doing great.
Okay. Jemila, you're still good. You're still with me.
I'm here. Oh boy.
Okay.
I'm here.
Video of this. I forgot that you had done a video, but I was actually looking stuff up. And when I like searched to gaze upon wicked gods, your face like came up as one of the top results. And I was like,
wow. It's you.
This is so freaking involved, honestly, that I was trying to like get my head around like a recap of this. So Molly X Chang was one of the authors that was targeted by Kate Corain. Do you remember the Kate Corain situation? Kate Corain was like review bombing people under sock puppet accounts, mostly authors of color that were like in her debut class, got caught, like, and that whole thing imploded. So Molly X Chan was one of the primary targets of this review bombing. Fast forward to her book about to be coming out, and she received a negative review from somebody who was talking about this being a colonizer romance. And she at first was implying that she was being review bombed again, and then very specifically took on this author, and it became a whole like another sort of like unmasking sort of situation, because it turned out that one of these specific reviews came from the sister of an author author who was also in this review class. So it was like sister of an author wrote this, like, and then it was like, oh, but she wrote it anonymously or like catfishing or whatever. It was just her Goodreads account that wasn't like associated with her name directly, but it was unmasked as being a sister of an author who wrote this review calling it a colonizer romance. And then so it got into this whole thing about people defending about whether or not this was a colonizer romance or not. And then genuinely, because this was inspired, oh goodness, this is like now going to slip my mind. Project 731 is the Unit 731, because this was like inspired by Unit 731, as like explicitly stated by Molly X Chang in like the book itself. This got onto a section, like the darkest section of the internet, that did really garner her a lot of like direct racism because of this. Like people were coming for her, being explicitly racist for her, and so that got tied into the whole like sort of narrative of like these reviews then sort of like attacking her and being racist or whatnot. And then she like was like kind of backing away from this being a colonizer romance and insisting that it wasn't, even though she was like promoting it as an enemy, like a villain romance, and as Zutara on steroids. Like all of her marketing material had called this like, you know, pretty like villainous or whatnot, but then she was saying no, it's not a villain romance. So it's like very back and forth on what was going on. And then I read it, Jemila read it, you read it, right?
Yeah.
And it was a colonizer romance. I don't know what to tell you.
I would say it's like 99% colonizer romance. I wouldn't say 100% it is, but like
it is only romance adjacent because we don't actually see the full extent of the relationship in this book, right? It's not to that
in the middle of the book where any of the like development of the relationship would have happened, and then suddenly we come back. What, it was like 6 months later and they're like both already in love with each other. I'm like, yes. What happened?
And then Molly's whole thing too was like, well, and like in the second book, then like he's like we don't know what's gonna happen, right? Like he's not end game. So that's like why this is not a colonizer romance. But the thing to me is that the colonizer was romanticized. So I don't know, like there's and that is like only one of the problems that I had with this very poorly written book, in terms of like how it was representing like the whole Unit 731 sort of like is so glossed over because it actually really does not care very much about like human experimentation and colonization, because it is so focused on this man and like the tinglies that she gets whenever he's near her, even though he's making her do all of these weird or like bad things. So it's like very strange sort of dynamic that it set up. And the conversation itself was very, very weird because it got into that like whole thing of like reviewer authors and reviewer spaces, and then also interpersonal drama, because it was like a whole drama between Molly X Chang and the other author and the other author's sister, and Sharon J. Zhao is always at the scene of the crime somehow. So it was very, very involved.
Yeah, this whole thing was such a mess too. And it's like the sister of that author, and then because she buddy read it with someone else, like I don't follow either of them on social media, but like I frequently see their like reviews on Goodreads come up a lot. So I was like kind of familiar with them. And so they like buddy read it and both posted like very long, very detailed like rant review about this book. Like it's very clear they read the book and had like genuine criticisms, and like now having read it, like I think maybe they were being a little extra in the way that they wrote the review, certainly, but like all of it made sense to me. But I think it just like really exploded, and I think Molly really latched on to the fact that one of the reviewers is the sister of another debut author, and there seems to have already been like some interpersonal beef between them. So like that whole thing, I honestly don't even care about that. But I do think Molly was being extra. I do. And I it sucks that like this book broke like containment of like book Twitter, because like you said, it went beyond, and it actually went to like, my understanding was like Chinese nationalist incel spaces, and she was getting a lot of like really disgusting comments, and that sucks. Okay. And I don't think that
I did hear about this. I was trying to figure out like why Yes, I did. I heard about this when it went there. When
Yes.
it, yeah.
And because I think a lot of people, and there were like actual Chinese people, like people like in China who like heard about this situation and were very upset about the inclusion of Unit 731 in this way, like where it is like pitched as a romantasy. And so there were like valid concerns being brought up there, but then it like went far, and then she started receiving like horrific comments, you know, like super misogynistic and all that stuff. But yeah, the whole Unit 731 thing was so bizarre to me, especially like when you actually get like, you know, it's coming, right? Because like I knew what Unit 731 was. So I was like, okay, obviously there's like experimentation happening. It's gonna be super fucked up. But like it happened so quickly at the end. They don't even like actually like explain. I went back and rewatched my review because I was making my like worst books of 2024 video. And they don't
That's mean, Jemila.
I don't care. I don't care.
Again,
Yeah, yeah, but they don't like talk at all, like explain like what it is, even just like the basis of the experimentation. I'm like, wait, what were they doing? I don't actually understand what was happening. They glossed over it so fast, and I stand by this. Like, spoiler alert, I guess, for this book, she discovers that a friend of hers who was supposedly released as one of the conditions of her starting to work with the prince was never released, and in fact was being experimented on. And I think that was a bad choice, because then all of her anger was, you lied to me about releasing my friend, and I'm also mad that you're experimenting on my friend. But there's like none of that energy for like the actual thing that's happening.
Yes.
She is so like like caring of like her own people in general. Like she is constantly talking about how she doesn't want to use her powers because it's gonna like kill her, whatever. So that's why she never joined the like rebel group. But as soon as this hot prince comes and says, I want peace, and in order to achieve this peace, I need you to be my assassin and use your powers constantly, she's like, all right.
Sign me up.
My arm. And it just none of it was all so deeply nonsensical. Like every single choice that was made in this book was so fucking stupid. And I'm like, do you even understand what you wrote? Like I can understand like maybe where she was trying to go with this, but the fact that there was no relationship development, either showing like how she fell in love with him and like the manipulation that is supposedly happening, like I can't buy into anything. It sucked as a romance, and it sucked as a book that's supposed to be like, look at this guy manipulating her, you know.
Yes, and it sucked as a fantasy because the world and like everything, like the fact that they were Romans that came from the sky,
like I was like, what are we doing?
They were Romans who came from the sky, and those were the colonizers, which is also a really weird choice when you think about like the way that this is seated in history. To like,
I thought it was
really
fantasy Japanese version, you know.
It was very strange, and this was certainly the energy is like, yeah, he's a colonizer, but his beautiful green jade eyes and his human experiment, like she just glosses, like she's more mad that her best friend is hurt than she is about like the human experimentation. Like the whole thing was very sloppily done, and like honestly, like deserving of like the criticism that it got and of the 1-star reviews that it got, and it just got so tangled in all of this interpersonal drama. And I honestly think that people were still like enjoying the self-righteousness and like the cop energy that they got from unmasking Kate Corain, and like the boost that gave them. Not that I think that Kate Corain was right, or that like that was a price to pay for or whatever, but I think that people went so in on Kate Corain and enjoyed that whole thing so much. People love being cops, that this then became a whole thing of like unmasking another person. It was like this reviewer, and it's just like feeding that thing where people want to be cops so bad, in a way that is really weird.
I saw a lot of people too positioning this as like a, how can these people go against this like young woman of color or whatever? And I'm like, the two reviewers were also young women of color, and one of them was also Chinese. So I don't really know like, what we're doing here.
It absolutely drives me crazy. But no, people are saying it in the comments, and I agree. I think I think we need to abolish Zutara from any marketing material.
Same with Raylo and Hermione.
I think too many people are also like super eager and itching at the fingers to be part of the Scooby Gang
Yes.
and like Mr. Incorporated and be able to rip the mask off of someone and save the day. It's very, very strange.
And like Sharon's like whole like I have 37 pages of receipts like that people were living for that. And I don't know, there's a sense of like trying to get to that with so many things that I'm like stop being police officers right now, calm down. But you know,
I'm surprised. I'm honestly really surprised that Sharon was not involved in the unmasking of Freda's moon.
Honestly,
There's a whole
it's okay. We're done with discourse. So I know, like I said, that we're done with like this year specific discourse. Probably left a bunch out. If there are any that you can think of that like we didn't mention, you want to put them in the chat. But we also had our fair share of cyclical discourse this year. So this is the stuff that is not specific to 2024 that comes up every single freaking year and did absolutely come up this year as well. So we have rating. Should you rate and review DNFs? Let's do this like rapid style. Jemila, do you think that you should rate or review DNFs?
I don't really care either way.
wrong answer.
I don't know that I would personally rate DNFs, but I also don't care if anyone does.
Gracie?
I do, depending on how far into the book I got. If I DNF'd at page 1, I'm not gonna mark it. If I DNF'd at page like 30, I am gonna mark it as a 1 star, and I will give an explanation of why I DNF'd.
Chat, yes or no on rating and chat. Yes or no on rating and reviewing DNFs. I will review them. I usually don't rate them. And again, I also don't care. I literally do not care about how other people rate and review their books. Like, I think it is such a weird thing to be like all up in the like, I don't know, weeds of. I personally will rate it. Or I mean, I will review it. I'll review what I read, but I don't rate it. And yeah, I don't care.
Yeah.
Jemila, I don't give a fuck warrior. Jamila's winning the I don't give a fuck war.
This is a recency bias because I opened Threads, I think, yesterday, and this is like all over my feed. And Threads knows that I'm going to fight with every single person, so that's why they feed it to me.
Threads?
Fucking Threads. There's so much happening right now of like, no, stop doing worst of list. It's so mean. No worst of books, please. There's so much negativity in the world.
Why do you even want to write a negative review? What does that do for you? What's the point of negativity?
Yes.
Yes. I look forward every year to making my worst of list.
That's what I'm saying.
I actually already I have like this whole idea in mind of how I'm gonna edit this video. I'm so excited.
I made the cutest little graphic on Instagram. I spent a few minutes drawing a little smashed tomato where the 2024, I thrive.
Yes.
Let me tell you what was awful.
Listen, I personally, for like my own content consumption, I like people who give positive and negative reviews. I don't like people who only do negative, but I also don't like people who only do positive. And that's for me personally. That's how I curate my stuff. But there are plenty of people who only do positive or only do negative. And I just don't understand why people get so up in, I mean, I do. It's defensiveness, right? It's like people who are very insecure in their own opinions. And I think there's also a way that in the book community, especially, people prioritize authors and author feelings. Like authors are on pedestals for a lot of readers. And so there's a sense of like, if you are mean to books, you're mean to the author that I think feeds a lot of this. But I love this time of year. I love seeing people's worst of lists, especially if they're well articulated. Like there are bad ones. There are people just like, I just didn't like it. I don't find that fun. But if you can give me a delicious scathing review of a book, I'm seated. I love it.
Haters deserve rights too.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Okay, this one came from my Discord. I think Rue might still be in the chat. Sex versus spice in YA. This is one that comes up a lot. I think that it's cyclical because of the way that YA has sort of leaned towards being for marketed to and written for older audiences. And I think in like the last 4-ish years of book talk, this has also kind of been reignited with a lot of people being like, is it spicy about YA books? And you're like, oh my God. So any quick hot takes there about sex in YA versus spice in YA? I think this year was when we saw a YA book that had like a pre-order promotion, and it was like
NSFW, like not safe for work fan art.
Yes,
Yes.
fan art of the YA book. It's like pre-order and you get this like fan art.
Yes,
And
I
people were
did
like,
see
what
that.
the hell? So like there are a couple things that happened like that where it's like the conversation coming up again about whether sex in YA should be there, and like the difference of that and spice in YA.
Yeah, I think I hate that like all sex is like labeled as spice, because I really do think that those are separate things. I
Yes.
think sex is just a natural thing that happens, and spice is written with the intention of being graphically written in a way to um
Titillate.
elicit like horniness from
Yeah.
its reader.
Yes.
Um in simplified terms, I think it's meant to like get people hot and bothered. I think that's what spice is. So I think sex most definitely has its place in YA because teenagers are having sex.
Yes.
Um and sex does need to be like a more comfortable topic for them to discuss. I think YA should sort of be a place that where like safe sex is emphasized, and stuff like spice or like kink should be like reserved for like more like adult books, because that's when you get into areas where like you can depict sex and sexual activity as like getting into these like gray areas and like not being like performed like to perfection and stuff like that. But I think with YA there I think maybe there should be at some point like some sort of like understanding that this on some level is, for better or for worse, like an educational tool for like children,
Yes.
older children, but still children. But I think like I get so annoyed when people like describe a book with sex as spicy, because that's not always the case.
Yes.
It
I think
bothers me.
honestly, the like desire, grown adults' desire to read YA, but erotic, has given us some of the worst literature of the last few years. Like
Yes.
that is why we have things like Fourth Wing that read like YA, where the characters are barely legal, but that people want to see them in these super explicit and erotic and titillating positions. I'm not whatever. I'm not going to say more than that, but I think that like dynamic of people, I don't know why they don't want adult characters in these explicit. They want like as close to teen as possible, has given us this like very terrible like area of literature that we have now.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely room for sex in YA books. I think it's really interesting, like this shift of, while there's like a ton of people now who want like spice in books, we're also now seeing like the opposite, where people are being like really like anti-sex, and just like anti bad things happening in YA books, as if bad things don't happen to young people. It's just really interesting because I've seen some reviews of people talking about like a YA book where like some like maybe like dark things are happening, and they're like, wow, is this appropriate for children? And it's like, well, I mean, if kids experience these things, like I don't know why it couldn't be talked about in an age appropriate way. But in any case, I think all of those things, sex, dark topics, whatever, can all be in YA as long as it's done like age appropriately.
Yes. I think it's an interesting intersection of this like political moment and climate where we do have like the book banners and the pearl clutchers and all romance is porn sort of readers on one end, and then we do have these people who are like, is it spicy for literally everything that they come across, and it's like creating a very interesting tension, I think, in online spaces, especially for romance readers, and especially because a lot of the ways that TikTok has the language of TikTok in terms of things like spicy or whatever has blurred lines, like that nobody even knows what anybody is talking about anymore. And like there's
Yeah.
no like clear distinctions between like open door romance, closed door romance, erotica. Bring back erotica. When you bring
Oh
back
my
when
God,
you
just
book
say
want
erotica.
more,
Yeah, like the
it's
amount
like
of times.
Yeah.
so yes, it is all very confused and confusing. And like if I never see another person asking if a YA book has spice, like it will be too soon.
Yeah, it's really frustrating though because like TikTok is like really comfortable like flagging videos or removing audio for vulgarity. So like it's really frustrating that we have to turn to like overly censoring ourselves with like unaliving, schmexual activity, uh grape, um, spice to describe like adult topics. It's very frustrating. And then like people just never learned the proper terms for things. Like people don't know that you can Google the word like erotica and find all of your spice no plot books like to your heart's desire. It's like it's a whole thing.
I've also heard too, with like Kindle Unlimited and like self-published authors, like something being tagged as erotica like lowers their reachability. So like I kind of understand that too, like why they might describe it more as romance just so that they can get readers, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's rough. Like I just don't, even for me personally, like I don't like going into a romance book expecting a romance book. Like it can be really smutty too, but like if there's no romantic development and it's purely just a vehicle for the smut, then that's erotica, and I feel like it should be marketed as erotica.
Yes. Okay, we talked a little bit about this before we touched on it, but I put it here because right after the election, it was a moment on bookish spaces with like Trump supporters feeling very emboldened and like the worst people who honestly
Per use.
and nobody was surprised that all of these like toxic positivity, like, people were Trump supporters, but there was a whole backlash of like keep politics off of book talk and bookish spaces in general sort of discussion. I put here my favorite person who came out of all of this, which was the like near child. I don't know how old this person was, but they seemed young, who was like, $10 paperbacks are coming back, baby, because Trump is president.
God.
um yeah.
I don't care who you voted for. We just came here to read books and be friends.
Yes.
No, I came here to read books and make enemies, actually. Let me perform my mission.
There also in this whole thing, another thing that made me laugh so much was that there were a bunch of people being like, books are political, like in ACOTAR. And I don't know why so many people use, I mean, I do, because like ACOTAR is the holy grail amongst like the majority of people who were making this keep politics off of book talk thing. But the thing is that like these people trying to defend politics in book talk were like talking about politics within the book, which is fair, right? Things have political themes, but books aren't political just because they have political themes. So it's like this like missing of the point. And then also using Sarah J. Maas to have this conversation. I was like, can we have any other
I
authors?
know, because then these people also were not like criticizing the politics surrounding Sarah J. Maas. And then also, like, so many of these people were like, I don't even read fantasy. I just read like smutty romance novels. And it's like, okay, then we need to talk about the politics of like
Yes.
erotic literature and whether or not you're allowed to have access to those in a post Trump era or like in a conservative country. Like, all this stuff. But yeah, like so many people were trying to make this argument, but failing so miserably because they were talking specifically about like plot lines in
Yes.
popular books, but not like your ability to access books, period,
Yeah.
is political in and of itself.
Yeah.
Missing the point.
Bad.
I also think it's really interesting. Like, I didn't see like all of the videos of people talking about keeping politics out of book talk, but the few that I saw, the ones that like really blew up, it's really interesting how they were like using like almost like social justice language to make their point, which was really interesting. Like, just even looking at this screenshot of the first TikTok of like, do better. Like, this is supposed to be a safe space.
Literally, the phrases "do better" and "have the day you deserve." I need them to die.
It is so overused.
I'm over it.
It's just really interesting to see like how people were like trying to make their point and using like social justice language. And I'm like, what do you even mean by safe space? Like you're the type of person who would see like a cultural resource center on campus as a safe space and be like, why can't I go in there? And then now you're coming on here talking about safe space. Safe from who? From what? Like it just, yeah, it's
the entire like sort of backlash too of like Trump supporters specifically sort of demanding community with people who didn't want to have community with them anymore was so interesting. Like the way that like the places that they felt that they wanted to preserve were with people who they voted against like the interest of, in a way that I was like, geez, like it was so strange to me. Such a weird, like, why do you want to be with
like
them?
across the board, like beyond book talk, so many Trump supporters are like, my aunt just like blocked me, my aunt just cut me out, my friends don't want to be my friends anymore, I just had to break up with my boyfriend. It's like, whoa. What the heck?
yeah, like first of all, why do you even want to be in community with these people? But second of all, like I don't know, it's also so interesting seeing the opposite, where people were like, I had to unfollow like my favorite creators because it turned out they were Trump supporters. And it's like, nothing about them made you think that they would have become a Trump supporter before this.
No, truly, I was so concerned with how many people like I just had to unfollow, and I'm looking at,
or
first
have
of all,
mutual with someone, and I'm like, you never like one look at their page, and I'm like, yeah, that tracks to me actually.
Like, y'all don't talk to people.
Ever been surprised by somebody who said that they were a Trump supporter?
Yeah,
I've never been like you, because I promise you there was something before that point that like hinted at that. And so yes, like the thing that surprised me the most was Kiera Lewis not being a Trump supporter. I was honestly like,
that
all right,
I did get really surprised by. I was like, oh.
But
I wasn't surprised. She yeah, I think either way I wouldn't have been surprised. Like I wouldn't have been surprised if she was a Trump supporter, but she also gives that like totally like what am I trying to say? Like elitist, like well, not even. I was gonna say I lost the track. Never mind. It doesn't matter.
I was expecting her to be the type to be like, why do we have to bring up politics?
Yeah. I'm sorry, say it again.
I was expecting her to be the type to be like apolitical, like publicly, like why can't we like just keep this politics free? Like I wasn't expecting her to bring it up at all, really.
Yeah, I thought she was just not going to say anything at all, even making a video saying, why do we have to talk about politics? I thought she was just going to not say anything completely. But
there we are. Sarah J. Maas, closing it out with Sarah J. Maas always at the scene of the crime. I put Andrew, this guy here, because he had like a pretty significant thing where he defended Sarah J. Maas, basically saying, he was like, because he reads Sarah J. Maas, and so people were like, hey, did you know that she's a Zionist and that she also used Breonna Taylor's death to like promote her books? And so he did this whole video where he was like explaining why like both of those things are like not true and or like not egregious enough to like make him stop reading, and so he got a lot of backlash from there. Very hilariously, I stitched him and he was in my comments being like, thank you so much for this perspective, I'm listening and I'm learning, and then he blocked me.
Always listening, always learning.
And then he blocked me.
Well, he was done listening and done learning.
He learned enough. Immediately
the lesson's over.
Yeah, immediately kept reading Sarah J. Maas. But more recently, Drew Afawalo dressed up as Nesta for Halloween and had been like, I don't know if she's read the books yet, but she often gets compared, her and her man, to like Nesta and whoever Nesta is with. And so like, she's like, I don't know anything about these books. Like, so she's referenced Sarah J. Maas in those books a few times. And then they dressed up as that couple for Halloween. And so a lot of people were like trying to be like, hey, Drew, I don't know if you know, like inform her. Lots of people reached out. Some people tried to reach out and because of her lack of response or whatever, ended up blocking her. Fast forward to a little bit later, Drew got into some other unrelated sort of backlash because some white lesbian said that there would never be a lesbian Drew off Wallow, and that set off
I don't
another
even.
another chain of events. And following that, Drew announced that she was taking a break from TikTok specifically for her mental health. What does this have to do with Sarah J. Maas? The Sarah J. Maas girlies came out and they were like, "You guys, this is why you shouldn't have criticized her for dressing up as Nesta for Halloween because look now she has to take a mental health break." And they
Here's
used this to defend Sarah J. Maas and say that she wasn't racist actually. So
here's what like really pisses me off about all that. It was like so blatantly disingenuous. Um and oh god, what bothered me, like there's one person in particular who made this whole video being like, Drew Wallow got like run off the platform. I'm trying to figure out like what happened. So I go to check, and the most recent controversy is the Sarah J. Maas thing. If you watch Drew Afwallow's video for more than 10 seconds, which is hard, I know. Oh no. If you watch it for more than 10 seconds, Drew repeats herself multiple times. That this actually has nothing to do with any sort of negativity she's received. And she goes into this whole thing how like this has nothing to do with any hate that she's received. She's like she's not being run off anywhere. I think she says in the video the words "I'm not being run off the platform," which is crazy. She said she goes into this whole thing about how she's had a long standing issue with not being able to rely on herself for seeking any sort of like validation. Like she has an issue where like she um derives her self-worth based on the opinions of others, and how that's not healthy. And she talks about how she should have taken a break a year ago but still kept going with like getting burnt out. And so she says that she's taking this break off of social media to work on herself, like with a therapist and everything, so that she can build up her own self confidence and like build herself up and not have to rely on the positive opinions of others in order to feel valuable. This was
Mhm.
explained in multiple different ways in the
Very
most
clearly.
simple, in the
Yeah.
very clearly, in the most simplified, palatable, easily digestible way possible, with lots and lots of repetition, that this had nothing to do with any hate that she received. And so many people were like, oh my God, this is because people criticize her for a cosplay.
You know what is
I've
so
never wanted to
insulting to
rip
me?
my hair out more.
Yeah. What was like especially insulting to me about that was, of all the things that would have run Drew off this
Of
platform,
all the
it's
incels she puts
some
up with.
people who are like very kindly trying to explain to
Kindly.
her about Sarah J. Maas.
Yeah, being like,
That's what ran her off, but not like the doxing and the stalking and like the horrific, like misogynistic, fatphobic, and racist vitriol that she's received because of her content. Like, that's not what ran her off. It's some people on Book Talk trying to like explain to her that Sarah J. Maas is problematic.
yes. And in a way, you were talking before about like co-opting language. Like so many of these white women who were then coming on and being like, see, you guys, look what you did to a woman of color. Because, and in a way, that was like protecting this woman of color, but also like sneakily defending Sarah J. Maas in a way that it is just disgusting. It was honestly like very icky for them to position themselves that way when the person that they were clearly more invested in was not actually Drew. It was Sarah J. Maas. It was like the defense of their favorite, but they were using this. It was like a very, self-serving sort of thing. They were using, like Drew was obviously very like not, this was something that was difficult for her. So using that like pain or that thing that she was going through in order to defend Sarah J. Maas is nasty work. That was awful.
Yeah, especially because I feel like a lot of the comments defending Drew were really like not even like let her like what she likes, like she's just cosplaying. Like they were specifically going out of their way to defend Sarah J. Maas in particular. And I'm like,
Yes.
what does this have to do with her cosplaying?
Yeah, and it's honestly, it's at a point where I'm so over arguing with like Sarah J. Maas stan accounts, because like when you bring up the use of Breonna Taylor and like her murder to promote like an upcoming like book cover reel or whatever it is that she was promoting, the default is always she was just using her platform in the only way she knew how.
Yes.
She didn't even post a picture of her. She posted a picture of her own book,
Her
where
book.
Breonna Taylor is a footnote in the
Yes.
description, where she immediately transitions to when you can pre-order.
Yeah, when she's like,
Um,
I hope this like book about fairies is a distraction from the systemic murder of Black people in this country. Don't forget to pre-order. What the
yeah,
fuck?
she couldn't make a
Like,
standalone post. She couldn't
You couldn't
put the
even use
picture
a
of
black
Brianna.
square.
She like,
a
what do
black
you mean? Like the
square.
only you not even a black square. Oh no. Like she genuinely like, what do you mean that was the only way she knew? Like you in a passing thought to prioritize the conversation on how you can make money, that was the only way. I think that's worse. I think that's actually worse if that was the only way that she could like ever think to discuss this in any way. Like I think that's honestly so much worse.
Yes. People are bringing up the like infantilization of Sarah J. Maas by her fans. And that is
Yes.
100%. I mean, I think that that infantilization goes hand in hand with her being like an attractive white woman who is like benefiting off of like white mediocrity. But this is so funny because whenever you criticize, like I just did a review of Throne of Glass, the number of times people were like, well, she wrote it when she was 16. It didn't get published when she was 16, and that's a grown woman now. So, like, I don't know. There's like a
She
very
hasn't been 16 for a while.
for a while. So let's move past that. I was 16 once too. You know, we were all there once. Okie dokie. All right. We have made it to trends and hot topics. So these are things that I think were hot topics this year that will probably continue on into 2025. So I want an opportunity for us to talk about some of the things that we've been noticing in terms of publishing, like wider publishing trends. Editing.
What
where
editing?
where did it go? Am I alone? I sometimes I'm like, is this real? Is this like, am I the only one noticing that like there's like the lack of editing is like becoming, I don't know, it is awful right now in sort of wide publishing spaces. How have you guys kind of seen that landscape?
She ran like something was chasing her. I'm getting I think part of it has to do with there are quite a few like traditional publishers with where what they're doing is they're taking like uh indie published like book talk darlings and just picking them up to like be re-edited barely if anything, um and maybe given like a new cover and then re-released under like this new traditionally published label. And it's happening a lot with like, I'm seeing it most often with like the like adult romance books that are like really trendy on Book Talk, how they'll be like picked up by like a publisher and moved off of like Kindle Unlimited for a little bit, and it's the exact same book and it has not improved much or at all. And I think a lot of it has to do with like some of these traditional publishers just like seeing easy money. Um, and yeah, I no, I think that is just it. I think it's like a lot of like
Just
publishers like seeing this as easy money and like thinking that unfortunately not based on nothing that like readers will read anything.
yeah. I think that we're also like the way that the Red Tower model worked, where it was like they're like, what if we did less money in editorial and gave you special editions? Would you like that? And everybody said, yay! And they made it like a mega bestseller. And I feel like we're especially now, you know, over almost 2 years out from like Fourth Wing, we're really starting to see that trickle in the publishing industry where everybody's like, what if we like continued to pay less and less editors who were leaving the industry in 2020 anyways, and we just gave you a special edition instead? So now everything is a special edition and nothing is edited, and it like makes me want to die. Honestly, I that like the quality of things is like really really ruining my life.
Yeah, I definitely noticed a lack of editing, but I actually wanted to go back to the point you brought up, Gravy, about indie or self-published books getting picked up by traditional publishers. And I'm sure a lot of it is just, it's easy to, they don't have to do any work and then they just reap all the benefit. But I am kind of like wondering what it would look like if you had like a self-published book that's been out for a while, you know, like at least 6 months to a year. It has cultivated an audience, and then it gets picked up by traditional publishing, and then like major edits happen that might even change the book, like how the book functions. I'm kind of interested if maybe like publishers are wary of doing that because it might upset the fans that are already there. Like, I'm kind of curious like how that would even work.
I think the thing is though is that like these publishers aren't letting the indie books be that all that trendy for long before they swoop in.
That's
And
true.
also we've yet to see anyone try that, like where they actually try, like it's because like when these like big publishers are like picking up like some of these like really poorly written books and then just letting them stay poorly written, they're not like these major, it's not like Penguin Random House or like Tor. Like it's not really like these big Tor did pick up like one of these like really popular indie book talk books. They picked up Legends and Lattes, but that was already like pretty beloved, and I don't think very many people have like critiqued it like en masse for like it being like a poorly written, but like having like poor writing quality. And Tor, that's not really like, something that Tor does often, but like we haven't really seen a big publisher with who is willing to spend money on like a good editor try that, like where they've like taken like a really popular book and made major changes.
There was one book that came out, I think, recently. I can't remember the name of it. That was originally self-published, and then it got picked up, and there were substantial enough edits that people noticed it and were unhappy about it, and like said that they preferred the indie version.
Interesting.
It is, yeah, I think it is all really interesting.
I'm going to say something pretty controversial here and say that I think that a lot of this it has to do with, you know, traditional publishing not putting the resources when they pick these books up, but I also feel like these indie books should have been edited anyways. Like,
Yes, they should have.
if you're
They
gonna
should have.
publish a book, I don't care if it's indie and like, you know, 99 cents or on KU. Why is that book not edited? Like,
No,
why?
because some of like there are some beautifully written books that are independently published that are like straight off of like Kindle Unlimited that like have got like been developed across multiple years, that like have gone through like editing multiple times over, that like you can see so much love and care has been put into it, but it's just like it's indie published, like it's almost too accessible at this point.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
I think a lot of people just don't want to like spend the money to get a good editor or even spend the time, because like a lot of these books need like heavy developmental edits, you know?
Or if you're like Piper CJ, you don't give it to an editor because you cannot handle negative feedback.
yeah. And then you just cry and it sells
And then
anyway.
you cry when you get negative feedback because you put it out in public.
I do understand that, like, you know, hiring an editor or, you know, that is an additional barrier and then not everybody has that, but it is a like one that is essential to the process of publishing. And so I feel like there's this idea that you can just skip the editing and like still publish a book, where I'm like, I'm not trying to be a gatekeeper here. I just want people to understand that editing the book is part of writing a book. And it's not something you can just skip because you don't have the resources or can't find a way to like community build or like edit each other or sit with the book yourself for long enough to edit it. Like that is not just a step that you can skip. And like the thing with both this and indie publishing, the lack of editing that's happening in traditional publishing, and the thing that like we're going to get to with AI as well, is that I think that it's all coming from the same place of people just being more interesting in producing a good to sell versus like a story to be told. And the thing is that there's an audience for just consuming that good. And it is all of these readers who read brain off, who don't care about the writing, who I'm gonna, I don't care about the plot holes. I just care about like tropes and moments in stories. And so we have these machines now that are turning out these kinds of consumer goods books that are not true stories in any sort of meaningful way, which is why people can like justify using AI as well. Like, because I just need to have a thing that I can sell at the end of this, and screw sort of like the process and the art of like making any sort of meaningful story. Are we ready to talk about, I don't even really know how to pronounce this, Draco and oh, and
Hermione.
Hermione.
Hermione, which is terrible.
Because it's Draco and Hermione.
Hermione.
Harry Potter.
So wait, hold on. Repackaged fan fiction. We talked about repackaged indie books. So repackaged fan fiction is also like, I think, an extension of this, where you're taking things that have a built-in audience and you're trying to like retooling them. We got a lot of Raylo over the last year.
There's too much Raylo. I made a note when you had originally asked me if I wanted to talk about just like trends and all this stuff, and I made a note in the trend section that I just need to see Adam Driver on book covers less. Actually, I think I I hope he sues one of these people. Because some of these book covers are there. It's just Adam Driver. It's literally just Adam Driver, and it's really concerning. But no, like I'm there's a lot of like repackaged fan fiction, and I love fan fiction. Like one of the best books I read all year was a supernatural fan fiction about Dean and Castiel. Like I love a good fan fiction, but I think there's like too much of it being like blatantly, like obviously put out into the market with like no shame, no care of like any sort of potential like lawsuits that you're opening yourself up to. And it's just like also like some of the most bizarre fan bases. Like it's just, it's so much Raylo, it's really annoying.
Yes. I think that it maybe not impossible, because I would never say that. I think it's really hard to successfully repackage fan fiction in any sort of meaningful way, and to remove it from the context of its IP and also its conversation with like every other fan fiction. I think with
Hermione.
yeah, that one. Hermione, especially, there's like a version of Draco that exists in fan fiction that is known only to the consumers of this fan fiction. And so, like, pulling it out of that context, pulling Radel out of its context, I think does such a disservice to these books, that what you're getting is, again, things that have not been properly edited, that don't stand on their own. You're pulling the foundation out of a house and going, here, that'll be $30 because it has sprayed edges, and it's just really bad. I read the Hurricane Wars this year.
Okay, but under Trump, there'll be 10.
Bring $10 paperbacks are back.
$10 paperbacks are coming back, Marines. They're not going to be $30 for long.
Oh my god. Yeah, I hate this trend a lot, just in terms of it like not being well done, especially when it's coming from like IP that like has extensive world building. There's just no way that you can. I mean, I guess it kind of worked for the like contemporary AU fanfics of Raylo, where it was basically in our world and there's none of the like original world building happening. But
it's just insert falling in love with Adam Driver.
Exactly. Yeah, that kind of works. I guess. I just don't like it like on principle. And I feel like it's also just like, I don't know. I worry about the sanctity of like fan work. Like, I just don't. I think this stuff should remain within fan spaces. It should remain free. And I think it should not be repackaged. Like, I just feel like a popular fanfic can bring an author to their agent or to a publisher. But I think that author should be writing something original. Like, I just don't think they should be repackaging their old fan fiction that is like, and it's just going to be so far removed. It's going to lose all of the appeal because it's no longer a part of the original IP. I don't like it at all.
It's becoming like all too common for people to be reading a book and for someone to be like, wait, I read this on AO3 like 4 years ago. Like, I really don't appreciate that on like a whole other level. And people are just like too comfortable with like how obvious they are about it. I like some Ali Hazelwood books. I think she's such a she's so proud of being like kind of a freak, but like she with like all of her books, like she leans really heavily into like photoshopping Adam Driver holding up pictures of her books, and she's so shameless about it in a way that I get
So
really frustrated
I
by.
did not know that, and that
But
gives me such an ick.
it's really like, but like, oh my god, like
I cannot
what
follow
was
her
it?
on
Love
social
theoretically
media.
slaps. But like it's like I just like need people to develop more shame about like where this is coming from, because this was also part of like this year but also last year, just like the amount of like Travis Kelsey, Taylor Swift published fan fiction works that have been in circulation is really uncomfortable. It's really, really uncomfortable. And they'll just like use photos and videos of like Taylor and Travis, these real people,
Yes.
and promote their very obvious published fan fiction with like barely changed names. And it's so ugly.
The bad news is that everybody agreed in the chat that Raylo has peaked, but that means that next year we're getting more of this. Say it again.
Hermione.
Hermione.
You know what I also think we're going to be seeing some soon? I think Hermione is going to open a door to what's the other Marauders.
The Marauders,
I
sure.
think we're going to get like a as soon as like Hermione like gets
That what is it?
popular,
All the men or whatever that really.
All the wise guys,
all
all
of
the
those
young men,
dudes,
all the
All those dudes.
all of those dudes.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna get Marauder.
I
Am I saying
think
that?
like I think
Marauders.
Hermione is gonna like kick open a door for Marauders fan fiction to like enter the mainstream. I don't even fully understand what Marauders is. Literally anytime I see freaking who was the actor who played the Darkling in the Shadow and Bone show?
Ben
Oh,
Barnes.
Ben
Oh yeah,
Barnes.
he's a popular fan cast.
Every single time I see young Ben Barnes with like a sepia toned like
Yeah.
anything, I go, "Oh God, this is Marauders," and I'm always right.
Yeah.
I block immediately. I don't even fully understand how this has like taken on its own like life. With
I
As a former very intense Harry Potter fan, this is bringing up a lot of things for me.
you're having a moment. You're like shifting over there, like
No, I'm just like this is all rough from multiple perspectives,
yeah.
honestly. But yeah,
I hate Raylo. I really hate Raylo, but I think I might hate
Hermione.
more.
let's say it how you want to. It doesn't matter. Who cares about them?
I hate Dramamine more.
Exactly.
Here's the thing. This is like one of my soapboxes. Anytime I'm like, ahem, I'm tired of seeing this on people's main because people think that like talking about Harry Potter via fan fiction is a safe way to leave J.K. Rowling behind. But J.K. Rowling's brand of bullshit has gotten so it is so big and so beyond her. Like she is now benefiting from being kept culturally relevant, and I don't think that there is a responsible way to even indulge in like some of these things, because the thing is that people don't just leave it at the fan fiction. The number of people that I see like reading, engaging, making fan edits, like all of this is keeping her relevant in a way that means that she gets to keep doing active harm and being transphobic in like really, really like insidious ways. And so I am like somebody that if you are talking about this on your page on main, that is an easy unfollow at least and block at most, because I'm over it. I just don't, I think we've moved beyond the point where like we can do this anymore.
I mean, people are actively saying that they are reading Harry Potter because they want to read these fics. Like,
Yes.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
It has
Oh,
been
that's
kept so culturally relevant, and now there's even going to be this reboot TV show on HBO Max. Like,
why does that stuff happen? The stuff that actually puts money in J.K. Rowling's pocket happens because she is culturally relevant. And she is culturally relevant because people will not shut the F up about these books that aren't even that good. Oh my God, move on.
Yes. This is actually why Kira Lewis got into Harry Potter and like now has Harry Potter merch. She started reading the books so she could read Manacled. That one. Manacled. And she got really invested in Harry Potter, and now that's like part of her
No,
core identity for
I
this
can't
year.
believe she's reading it because of Manacled.
No, truly, like, and that's like pretty popular. Like, so many people saw Manacled and wanted to read it, but they were like, "Oh, let me just like go back to understand the world building," and now they're super invested in Harry Potter.
Yeah, I'm over it. I mean, I'm over it, but it's just the beginning because this one, The Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love, is getting trad pubbed, and so is Manacled is getting,
And the auction.
and the auction is being trad pubbed. So
I don't even want to know what the auction is.
I don't either.
You won't.
It sounds really concerning.
No. Okay. Talked a little bit about AI already. We saw a bunch of, I put Gothican on here because it was one of the like AI covers that got talked about. Was that this year? I don't know.
I
But
think it was.
yeah, but you know, I've seen a lot of people like, you know, this whole thing about whether or not authors should use AI. The Canary Cowards lady who did the fried chicken with the black man, she got into hot water before for using AI to promote her work. Piper CJ got into hot water for using AI to promote her work, that she was like doubling down that it was not AI. And people are like, ma'am, this is the AI that you use. And she's like, no, I took the screenshot myself on a video game. And people were like, you're lying. So a lot of people getting in hot water for using AI. But I've also seen a lot of people just claiming that everything is AI, like everything bad, like, oh, Rebecca Yarros is probably using AI to write this. Like every single thing that people think is bad is now also being accused of being AI in a really weird way.
Literally, anytime I make a video about like sentient object romance or this freaking published Grinch fan fiction that I just reviewed, like anytime like I dive into the realm of like weird, like objectively weird, like weird, intentionally done weird, top comments is this AI. It's most egregious when I talk about Chuck Tingle, which is so disrespectful because Chuck Tingle would never use AI. And I take it personally on his behalf, actually. But people will like see something kind of stupid, kind of weird, kind of freaky, and they're like, AI question mark? But like I feel like this uh humans are more than capable than being like weird. Like we
Yeah,
don't it's so frustrating. And it's like I don't know, I feel like it's gonna like oversaturate AI concerns.
yes. In a way where people are missing the actual point of like what we should be looking for. And it's just like
Yeah,
that is
people
AI.
don't actually know like what are the indicators or like
Yes.
of AI. And I remember there was a video that this ultimately got deleted, but this appeared to be like a younger person who's very clearly not aware of what Harlequin novels were, and like was like looking at the
Yes.
full shelf of them in Barnes and Noble, and they were like, this has to be AI generated. And I was like, bro, you don't know the lore, man. You just don't know
You
Harlequin.
don't get it. Or if you're coming from like the writer's side of like threads. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I heard like this like tapping, this like booming sound, and I was like, what? I'm just in Texas and people have
Shooting
fireworks.
them. Oh.
Freaking fireworks. Oh no, not again. Sorry.
Oh,
I mean
okay.
or who knows. But like it's fireworks. I'm so over it. I need I need us to get to like the halfway point in January when they're officially done because it will take the halfway point of January. But if you're coming from the writer's side of like threads, somebody said that an indicator of AI is heavy use of M dashes.
Stop.
Marty.
Well, people don't know what they're talking about anymore.
That was such a big point of contention of
Confirmed
so
Sarah
many
J.
authors
Maas.
Sarah
passive,
J. Maas has been a robot all along.
passive aggressively being like, I like M dashes actually. That's just me. That's a style choice. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah, no, all the AI claims are getting really annoying. I'm like, let's use critical thought is actually very necessary here if we're going to discuss AI and notice when something's AI, and yet it's just like gone over people's head.
And understand why it's bad, right? Like let's
Yeah.
like understand why, like the things we are actually looking for. But no, it is what I think it might be sort of like an offshoot of like how everybody now, no, everybody forgot how to be a hater, like a regular hater, and just say, I don't like this thing. Now everything has to be, they have to be morally superior
Oh,
to
I
everything,
hate the
right?
moral
Like
high ground of it
the
all.
more high ground, it just can't, I just can't be a hater, right? Like it has to be bad. Like
No,
I
it can't just suck. It has to be problematic.
it has to be problematic, right?
God.
I when I got accused of being in an MLM because of bindery, right? Because people can't just be a hater and say I don't like bindery, I don't like this model. No, there has to be something problematic about it. So you're in an MLM, and it's, oh my God, just go back to being a hater. Bring back haters in 2025. If you think the book is bad, it's bad. It doesn't
Well, I
have to
think
be.
this also goes to like the toxic positivity thing, right? People are just like not comfortable like openly disliking something because they feel like it's, I don't know, they're going to offend somebody or they're going to hurt the author's feelings. So they have to like come up with some sort of justification to talk about why they don't like a thing.
Yes, it's so annoying. Bring back bullying. This is the takeaway. Bring
Yeah.
back bullying and hating. It's gonna be clipped, and I'm gonna be like canceled tomorrow. We're almost done. Okay, TikTok ban. Who knows? But we have two newish spaces that at least popped off or got a second little like pop off this year because Twitter was the worst. But Blue Sky, Threads, TikTok, obviously we're here on YouTube. What have you been your experience on all of these spaces? Where will you guys be in 2025? Any thoughts, especially on people trying to make like there was like Instagram, book talk and bookstagram beef recently because bookstagram was like, we don't
So
want book
freaking
talkers here.
stupid. So stupid. That I hate. I just hate this
It's
because it
so
was
funny because
so
it's like,
dumb.
that's
It
your
was so
cousin.
many
You know that,
people.
right?
That's your cousin.
That's
Like
your cousin.
we saw so many
No, truly,
relations.
like it's when like two baby cousins just like start slapping each other and you're like, stop it, you're family. It's so frustrating. But no, I'm still on TikTok until I'm not able to be on TikTok
Yeah,
anymore.
fair.
That's been my favorite platform for better or for worse. I am on Blue Sky. Blue Sky is chill, but right now it's kind of chill in a kind of boring kind of way.
Mhm.
It's a lot of what my biggest pet peeve with Blue Sky, because it has an identical like character limit to like Twitter, but it's all the people who like hate Twitter and just want to relax. It's not as fun. um and it's I'm waiting for the trend to die of people on Blue Sky being like 20 books that change your life with no explanation. And it's just a book cover and I'm like, "No, I need you to give an opinion in any way." um but it's so many people who like really want to keep this like sacred space of positivity away from Elon Musk, and it's getting to like it's not even like toxic positivity, it's just boring. But I'm there, and I'm still feeling it out. I am unfortunately on Threads. I open it every single day and I get pissed off every single
So
day.
mad. Every time I'm on Threads, I'm so mad.
So I get so upset. I get so upset. And then I literally, it doesn't matter if I'm trying to engage honestly or in good faith. It doesn't matter if I'm just like giving a simple disagreement. People will just like, who was it? Because the current issue on Threads, which is like a million issues on Threads, it's people frustrated about reading numbers.
Yes.
And a lot of people are like, if you read 100, 200, 300 books this year, you're lying about it, and I hate
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
Um, and so many people just being like, fuck you. And me, I chimed in, unfortunately, of like, can we please just like get a grip? This is so stupid. We do this every year. You guys like make shit up all the time. Like my biggest beef right now is that Threads is filled with fan fiction about this mythical bragging fast reading bully with amnesia who can't remember the 300 books they're bragging about on social media. These people never provide screenshots, but someone literally they'll like come at it from like this place of like toxic positivity of like, stop being mean, people made a mistake, she made a mistake, please, you guys are being so mean. And then me being like, well, no, that's a grown woman, and me getting called a fucktard in response. But I need to stop being mean. Oh my god. But I am on Threads because I do also choose to engage with negativity. So it's kind of like this double-edged sword of like, I hate it so much, but I feel compelled to open it every single day anyways. And shout into the void while everyone else is shouting into the void. I'm trying to get on YouTube. It's just one of those things where it's like it's longer form content that needs to be, I think, edited more cleanly than I'm used to on TikTok. And so I have a full-time job outside of social media, so like my only time to record longer videos is at the end of the day when I'm not tired, which is rare. But I am going to try and commit to YouTube more frequently in this upcoming year, and we'll see what happens.
Jemila?
Yeah. I don't know. It's really funny because I had a moment like a couple of weeks ago where I was like, what if I just stop social media altogether?
Stop.
No, I literally was like, what if I just freed myself from this? But then I feel like I would get really bored. Because I do like making content. I don't know. I also work a full-time job, and my job is so much looking at a screen too that I just would never want to like come and edit a video on my computer, even though I like editing. I like the process of editing, but like what I want to do always takes time and all that stuff. And it's like dark when I get home and I don't want to record. Anyway, that's just me going on about that. But my biggest platform was on TikTok. I haven't really posted on TikTok this year all that much, like a handful of times, because I had a video that went really viral. And I got a lot of weird comments, and it didn't like run me off there, but I was like, oh, ew, I don't like this place.
Perceived.
So I was like, I'm gonna take a little bit of a break, and then I just never really came back, except now I'm like just popping into discourse because I don't give a fuck anymore.
I'm like, I can be so mean.
I know. I was like, it's going away. I'm gonna be a bully.
No, currently yes, I've been dreading opening
TikTok a little bit, but my true love is YouTube. It's just like making longer form content is difficult, and also I like the type of videos I like making are the ones where it's like a project of some kind where I'm like reading multiple books under like some sort of theme, but I'm also like horribly a mood reader. And I say horribly because like I will be in the middle of a book and suddenly be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And just like put it down. And then if I have to like read a TBR, like even if I'm like super excited about the ideas, like I initially am excited about these books that I'm going to be reading, like I will just get really bored of it all of a sudden. And yeah, so it's been a little bit rough, but I do like making YouTube videos. I will continue. It probably will be inconsistent as it always is. Sorry. But yeah, I am also on Instagram. Again, that hasn't been super consistent recently either. I'm on Blue Sky. I agree with Gracie. It's a little boring. I like the vibes are nice, but there's just like not a lot happening on there.
Yeah, I need balance.
Yeah,
I need some people being annoying
really quickly. Because I don't know, maybe I'm just not following enough people, but like I'll go through and I'm like, oh, okay, I caught up. At giving you the days of like actually being able to catch up on like your For You page or whatever. And yeah, I go on Threads like maybe once every other week, and I will scroll until I get pissed off, which is pretty quickly, and then leave.
I wish I had that strength, genuinely. It's like this like evil spirit. Oh, it's literally like, okay, like in the movie Nosferatu, where like Count Orlok keeps like whispering in freaking Lily Rose Depp's dreams.
And that's you and Threads.
Me with Threads, like the shadow like looming over me, like open it. And I'm like, okay.
I purposefully put Threads like in a very different part of my phone so that it's not like easy for me to access. And I also like deleted it off my phone at one point after there was Mari, you know, but like there was some discourse happening around a certain thing ending. And I was seeing some people talking and it was really pissing me off. And I was like, I'm gonna come on here and say something really mean. And I was like, let me just delete this app right now.
No, sometimes I try to stay away from Threads, but then I'll open Instagram because I'm trying to be a lot more active on there. And then when you're scrolling on Instagram and it shows you like Threads you might enjoy, and
Yeah,
it's
oh my
like,
god. And it's always something designed to piss me off.
I know it's either like really, really interesting or really, really frustrating. And I'm like, damn it, I need to see what the response is. Click and I'm in.
Yeah.
I want to be more active on Instagram, but I hate the algorithm there. I hate the feed. And like the stories is like 2 stories and an ad, 2 stories and 2 ads. And like the ads drive me absolutely bonkers. So if TikTok goes away, I feel like I'll maybe be forced to like spread my attention into other places. But honestly, I don't know. It might just be finally me coming back to YouTube with my tail between my legs and being like, hey guys.
I honestly hate how much reels dictate Instagram now. That's part of the reason why I like stopped posting as much there, because I'm like, TikTok is for my short form video, Instagram is for pictures. I don't like that mixing.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the person I am on TikTok is not the person I am on Instagram. And I don't really want to bring that energy over there, if that makes sense.
It's
Yeah.
weird because my Instagram is actually like my family's there, like coworkers, ex-coworkers, people I've worked with, and people who follow me for book stuff. So it's always been like such a weird space to me. Whereas like I started TikTok and I was doing book talk. And so it's like very dedicated in a way that Instagram still has kind of like a holdover of like old social media for me, where it's just like my personal social media. And that the only one that I really have like that is Instagram. And so
I
now
have a separate account. Like when I decided to like make bookish stuff, I created a new Bookstagram account.
Yes.
Like, and I have my private Instagram that's just people I know in real life.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah. And then my book stuff is on my Bookstagram. So like I had that natural separation, but I don't know. I really like I started off Bookstagram was actually where I started off initially when I started making content. And it was just really fun. Like, yeah, I think a lot of people are worried about aesthetic, and it is kind of like about the aesthetics, but I just had like fun taking pictures of the books and like giving my reviews of the books on there. I kind of treated it almost like a blog, and that was fun. And then suddenly reels showed up on the scene, and it's also like a very different vibe. It's like either like old TikToks that were popular like months ago, or like the culture of reels is just very different from the culture of TikTok.
It's very curated and very like clean. It's that's what my biggest like beef is, because in the great book talk versus bookstagram war that happened on Threads, it was like it was a lot of bookstagrammers taking it personally that so many TikTokers don't like the like clean aesthetic, like curated vibe of Instagram, because then I think that got interpreted as like you only care about aesthetics, but like no, I think Instagram just cares more about aesthetics in general than TikTok does. Like there's a level of impulsiveness to TikTok that is not present on Instagram at all.
TikTok in your closet and it could go super viral. Like you could like that feeling of I just picked up my phone and I'm doing this actually is part of
like there are people whose entire accounts are like them like angling the phone at the ceiling. You can't even see their face. It's just like a voice. But that's like, and you can easily like, go viral and like seek community, and like it doesn't really matter because no one's paying attention to like the look of the video. That's not a priority. Whereas like Instagram
and YouTube
and YouTube, like it's you, the look of it matters. So much more.
And I think too with like specifically like bookish reels tend to be like the like popular sound and like doing something to that popular sound a lot more than it is just like getting on there and yapping. Like I very rarely see people like making reels where they're just like chatting, you know? It's like something is happening in the video.
Yes. I have like, I don't know if I said this 3 hours ago, if I said it to somebody else, but I've like emotionally accepted that TikTok might be banned. I don't know if it will be like it's so up in the air at this point that I have no confidence. But like emotionally, I've made my peace with the fact that it might not be around. But yeah, I don't know what that means. If that does mean that like another video platform will appear to fill the TikTok void, I think that is a possibility. I know that the one that I keep hearing about is Neptune.
I keep hearing a lot about Neptune.
Yeah,
Never
so
heard of that.
yeah,
But
it's
it's
being
still like
developed.
in beta and it's
It's
still, I don't know. We'll see.
very, very early on. But I mean, Vine went away and years later TikTok appeared. So what the timeline is on like when we would get another video app, who can say? But it would be
Well,
interesting.
years later it was Musically, and
Music.
then it was TikTok. So I
Yeah.
don't know. Maybe there's
Musical-
already something we're overlooking that just needs a name change.
I honestly feel like it's going to be Instagram, at least at first. I don't know if maybe something else is going to develop, but I feel like
pisses me off to like for it to be like a Meta like brand. Like
I know, but that's why I think Meta was very heavily involved in the implementation of this TikTok ban.
Yes. And it pisses me off to feed into that, which is like I keep going back and forth to like, fine, I'll just grow my Instagram to being like, no, screw you. I'm not going over there. But
Oh, I'm not. If TikTok goes, like that content is not going to reappear on Instagram. Like Instagram is going to remain like pictures and stuff like that for me, and there will be YouTube. Like there just won't be short form content for me at that point, I feel like.
Yeah. The end.
Yes. Oh my God. Wait, almost the end. I want to finish so that the haters want to be morally superior. Can't say we spent it all on negative topics. I mean, we've done talked about a bunch, but I do want to end on if there is anything like throughout this year, positives that came out of the publishing industry, or for you personally, anything like achievements that you've had throughout the year, or just anything that you want to shout out that was good. What good came out of the reading community or your personal reading or content creation year this year? You can shout it out too.
I've been, for better or for worse, I have been seeing within my niche, I've been seeing like this explosion of sentient object romances, which I think is so silly and so fun. This was like, it's like this ever growing, constantly expanding niche subgenre, which like I understand is like being done for a lot of people as like sort of like a cash grab or sort of like, but I don't know, like I'm seeing like this really interesting like development with a lot of these authors who begin as sort of like publishing these books as like, well, fuck it, like if these other ones can go viral, I can probably go viral too, and into them like sort of carving their own space in this niche, and like actually like you can tell like the quality of writing like is changing over time with like these new additions to like their series, and sort of like watching people sort of like enter the space purely as a joke, sort of find some sort of care for what they've done, which I think is like always really fun. I managed to read over, controversial for Threads, I know. I managed to read over 300 books this year
Okay,
because this
how
was
much
my
do you retain? Do you actually
I can remember
everything that you read?
nothing.
Can you take notes?
I didn't take notes. I don't remember anything. Also, I'm better than you die. I am. I'm the villain everyone's been talking about. Because this was my year that I got really, really into manga and manhwas and like webtoons. So I've absolutely fallen in love with like comic format stories this year. Like I had kind of read some graphic novels, kind of read some manga, but this year I just got like super obsessed with it. Like weeks on end reading nothing but like manhwas and mangas, and I'm thriving. And so I've been really loving that this year.
Jemila?
Nothing positive. No, I'm just kidding.
And that's why you're killing this community.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I have to say, finally getting a special edition of the Broken Earth trilogy.
You've been like, yeah.
I feel like I wish that into existence. So you're welcome, everybody. I'm trying to think of what else. Attending BookNet Fest for the first time this year.
Yay!
That was such a highlight.
That was so much fun.
That was so much fun. I literally like talk about that with people IRL, and they're like, "What are you guys talking about?" Oh my god! Honestly, yeah, talking about the Discord in real life is really funny because I'm just like, "Yeah, a friend told me." And they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "A friend from online. I don't know."
I'm trying to get my mom to go with me for the next one.
Yes, bring your mom. Yeah, no, I was already telling people like, "Yeah, I'm going to Florida in May," and they're like, "What's in Florida?" I'm like, "I'm going to a book convention again."
Leave me alone.
Yeah, so that was fun. I think just being like in community with the cool people that I like has been good this year always. I also, as much as I like don't like reading bad books, like I have a lot of fun talking about it with people, like talking about it in the Discord, or also just like making, like, honestly, I'm really proud of my Blood of Hercules video, and that was so much fun to make. And I enjoyed seeing like everyone's comments about it. So yeah, stuff like that has been good. So
yes, I think somebody said here, that book discords were like a highlight of 2024. And I think in general, like niche communities, like building smaller communities, whether that's on Discord or around book events or things like that, has been really, really, really wonderful. And I think will continue to be a thing as like this uncertainty of like where book communities are existing. Obviously, I launched Bindery at the end of last year, and I acquired my first 2 manuscripts this year. So I'm super excited about both of those. The Unmapping comes out next year on June 3rd, and then Orange Wine comes out September. So super happy for both of those things. And yeah, BookNet Fest was a great time this year, and we already in pre-sales, we surpassed the number of attendees this year. So we already have more attendees coming for next year. So I think that next year is just going to be like us getting our groove back after like COVID hit and we had to cancel for 3 years. So it's feeling really, really wonderful. And what else? And as much, I didn't read this much this year as I have in previous years. Like I've read between 100 and 150 books, like pretty consistently over the last few years. And this year I'm like sitting at like 80. So it was like a slower reading year, but as much as I like crapped on like editing and stuff and like the trends of this year, I've read some really, really wonderful books this year. And I also had a like generally positive book reading year. I've only read like 3 books that were in that 1-star range. So I just had a very good positive reading year overall.
Yay.
All right. Yeah. Everybody pre-order the Unmapping. Yeah.
And everyone go to BookNet Fest.
Go to BookNet
One of my highlights for next year. I'm so excited. Hint, hint, to start like discussions on what panels are gonna be happening.
Sure.
You already know what my submission was.
I am so excited for that, and that needs to happen.
Okay, well, I guess now that you said it live.
Through the power of peer pressure, we can get a sentient object romance panel next year.
I need it to happen.
Great. I'm sure there's plenty we didn't catch. It's a very full and busy year, but we did yap for over 3 hours. So thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you to everybody who was here in the chat and I feel like so many of you were here the entire time, which, oh my God.
For real. The numbers stayed pretty consistent. I was like, whoa.
And don't be surprised if I invite you guys back. Maybe it's like a quarterly thing, like a little quarterly recap of the bookish goings-ons. I used to do this with Paige and Deboki and Sajid, and like they've been very like patchy in making content. So and then I did this again, and I'm like, oh yeah, I used to do this. So maybe quarterly roundups. All right.
Yeah, this was fun. I'd love to do this again.
Amazing. Great. It would be really funny if you were like, actually, I had a bad time. Do not invite me.
Actually, this is the last we're ever going to speak. I will be blocking you right after this. Always listening, always learning. I'm all done. Block.
All right. Good night. Good night, everybody. See you.
Bye.
Bye.